Chapter 1445. Dwarf Zhao Qi. At this moment, Dun stood tall and straight. His long hair fluttered in the wind, and he carried the tiger-head deep golden spear on his back. Coupled with his fierce aura, he looked like an indestructible spear. Zhuan did not take out the 9-star 8-trigram spear. After all, it was a profound saint artifact. A weapon of this level was not common in the 9 Netherworld realm. If he casually showed it, it would attract the attention of others. Let's go! With that, Zhuan leaped up, completely ignoring the terrifying gravity of the Sea of Bitterness. He shuttled through the Sea of Bitterness and rushed toward the surface. At the end of the Sea of Bitterness, there were 9 huge stone tablets on the surface of the sea. One of the stone tablets with the word "Martial" carved on it suddenly emitted a blazing light. This stone tablet was the entrance to the martial Netherworld realm. When the light faded, 3 figures appeared. These 3 figures were not old. There were 2 men and 1 woman. The men were handsome and tall, and the woman was beautiful. However, the 3 of them were panicking as if they were being chased. "Senior brother, what should we do? Zhao Qi is the strongest outer disciple of the Saint Martial sect. Even if the 3 of us work together, I'm afraid we won't be able to defeat him." The woman's eyes were misty as she spoke to a slender and handsome young man beside her. "We can only run now. This Zhao Qi wants the high-grade Emperor artifact that we just obtained. Even if we hand it over, I'm afraid that he will destroy us for the sake of the Saint Martial sect's reputation." The handsome young man said in a deep voice. The 3 of you can't escape. You will definitely die after escaping from the martial Netherworld realm. Even the higher-ups of the Hidden Spirit Mountain won't be able to save you." An arrogant laughter rang out. Immediately after, a figure with a violent aura suddenly rushed out of the stone tablet of the martial Netherworld realm. The figure that suddenly rushed out was short, only about 5 feet tall. He looked like a dwarf, but his aura was extremely powerful. Behind the dwarf were 3 young men. The 3 young men were staring at the dwarf in front of them in awe. "Run!" The 3 people's faces changed drastically. They shouted and hurriedly used their movement techniques to escape. Their speed soared to the extreme. "Don't even think about escaping. Chase after him." The dwarf sneered and took the lead to step into the air. The 3 young men behind him did not resist and followed closely behind him. The strength of the dwarf's group was clearly much stronger than the previous 3. Very quickly, the distance between the 2 was shortened. Looking at the dwarf and the other 3 who were getting closer and closer, the 3 who were running in the front had an ugly look on their faces. However, there was nothing they could do. After all, the dwarf behind them was the strongest outer disciple of the Saint Martial sect, Zhao Qi. He was a 7th-level martial emperor and was very powerful. The 3 of them were all 6th-level martial emperors. The gap between them and Zhao Qi wasn't small. They didn't have the advantage in numbers either. They had no chance of winning against Zhao Qi's group of 4. Seeing that the midget and the other 3 were about to catch up, the young man with delicate features in front clenched his teeth and took out a copper bell. He suddenly shook it, and a soul-stirring sound spread out. This voice was extremely strange. It actually had a charm that could hook one's soul, causing the 4 people who were chasing after him to stop. Their gazes turned blurry. This high-grade Emperor weapon is indeed extraordinary. It can actually make me fall into a daze for a short while. I must get it. Zhao Qi quickly regained his senses. His eyes were filled with greed. This time, he didn't hold back and took out his armor soul. "My armor soul, water ghost. Let's see where you can run to." Zhao Qi pointed at his forehead. Instantly, a black light shot out and drilled into the Sea of Bitterness. Then, a few hundred meters ahead of them, an extremely terrifying black wave was formed, completely blocking the path of the 3. Within the black wave, a huge irregular figure was wriggling and wreaking havoc. The black wave was stacked layer by layer. The 3 young men with delicate features suddenly stopped in their tracks. Looking at the terrifying black wave, their hearts trembled and their bodies trembled. "Diji, I'll give you a chance to live. Hand over the copper bell in your hand and I'll consider letting the 3 of you live." Zhao Qi stopped 10 meters away from the 3 of them. His eyes were filled with mockery as if he was looking at prey. He looked at the three of them and laughed. "You'll really let the three of us go?" The pretty girl's eyes shone brightly. "Hee, hand over the copper bell and I'll let you go. After all, my target isn't you but the copper bell." Zhao Qi crossed his arms and said indifferently. At the same time, the other three people from the sacred martial sect also came behind Zhao Qi and looked at him covetously. The young man named Di frowned and held the copper bell tightly in his right hand. "Senior brother Di, quickly hand the copper bell to Zhao Qi. Otherwise, the three of us will die." The girl turned her head and said to Di, "Junior sister Qi Tong is right. Senior brother Di's life is at stake now." The other average-looking young man also hurriedly advised. Di frowned and sighed. "Do you really believe Zhao Qi's words? It's not like you don't know his character." The two of them changed their expressions and fell silent. In the sacred martial sect, Zhao Qi's character was indeed not good. It could even be said that he had a bad record. "Do you have any other choice? If you don't hand it over, I'll have to take it by force." Zhao Qi was not bothered. He smiled and grabbed the air with his right hand. Instantly, a huge meteor hammer appeared. The meteor hammer did not match his petite body and even looked a little comical. However, Di and the other two could not laugh. Zhao Qi was a 7th level emperor and he was extremely powerful. Even if the three of them joined forces, they would not be a match for him. "Let's work together to stop him." Di made a prompt decision and took out a long sword. Yuan Force shot out from it and formed a violent rainbow behind him. The other two were not to be outdone. They also took out their own emperor weapons and charged towards Di. "3 pieces of trash dare to stop me?" Di sneered. With a twist of his waist, the huge meteor hammer smashed down like a meteor. The berserk power even set off a terrifying storm in the surroundings. Clang! The four of them instantly clashed. Di and the other two spat out a mouthful of blood and were pushed back. Take another blow from my hammer." Zhao Qi smiled proudly. The meteor hammer danced in his hands and smashed down again and again. Terrifying force filled the air. Di and the other two were extremely passive as they received Zhao Qi's attacks. They groaned inwardly. Zhao Qi was too powerful. Even if the three of them joined forces, they were still at a disadvantage. "Break!" Zhao Qi shouted. He raised the meteor hammer above his head and smashed it down. Instantly, Di and the other two's defense was shattered. Zhao Qi's eyes were ferocious. After breaking through Di and the other two's defense, the meteor hammer did not slow down and continued to smash towards the three of them. He wanted to smash them into pieces. "We're finished." Di and the other two were in despair. Seeing the meteor hammer getting closer and closer, they gave up struggling. They knew that they were going to die. Rumble! Just as Zhao Qi's meteor hammer was about to hit them, a water pillar shot up from the misery sea and blocked Zhao Qi's path. Bang! When the meteor hammer hit the surface of the water pillar, it bounced off like a spring. "What's that?" Zhao Qi took a few steps back and looked at the water pillar cautiously. Di and the other two heaved a sigh of relief after escaping from death. They immediately looked at the water pillar. Obviously, they were also puzzled. Why would a water pillar suddenly appear from the water? Pitter-patter. The water pillar gradually disappeared, revealing a slender figure. It was a young man around 24 or 25 years old. He was handsome and tall. His hair was tied into a crown and he carried a long spear on his back. "For you?" Zhao Qi's eyes narrowed. He could feel that the young man in front of him was very powerful. He was actually a 7th level emperor. Especially the long spear on his back. It was definitely not an ordinary emperor weapon. Zhao Qi did not want to be enemies with a 7th level emperor. Hence, his tone was very polite. "You're a disciple of the Saint Martial sect in the Martial Nether Realm?" The spear-wielding man tilted his head and suddenly asked Zhao Qi. Zhao Qi was stunned. Then he lifted his chin and said proudly, "I'm Zhao Qi. I'm the #1 outer disciple of the Saint Martial sect. I can see that you're not weak. However, the Saint Martial sect is very powerful. I hope you won't meddle in other people's business." Zhao Qi's words were filled with arrogance and a hint of warning. So, you're from the Saint Martial sect? Then I'll definitely meddle in this. The spear-wielding man sneered. Hearing this, Zhao Qi's face stiffened. He squinted his eyes and said, "Brother, you want to be enemies with the Saint Martial sect? You should think about the consequences." Before Zhao Qi could finish his words, a black shadow appeared in front of him as if it had teleported. Then, he felt his throat tighten as his feet were suspended in midair. Of course I've thought about the consequences. As long as it's a dog of the Saint Martial sect, I will kill it. The spear-wielding man said coldly. Then, he clenched his right hand and the crisp sound of bones cracking could be heard. Zhao Qi's head tilted and his eyes widened. He was dead. Zhuowen's sword finger-pointed at Zhao Qi's dantian. Immortal energy burst out and the nascent soul in his dantian was instantly destroyed. After doing this, Wen casually threw Zhao Qi's body into the sea. Silence. The surrounding atmosphere became eerily silent. Whether it was the three disciples of the Saint Martial sect or DG's group, they all stared at this unbelievable scene with their mouths agape. Zhao Qi, a level 7 martial emperor, was killed just like that. This was too fast. Moreover, the spear-wielding man's aura was not much stronger than Zhao Qi's. He was probably also a level 7 martial emperor. They were clearly of the same cultivation level, but Zhao Qi was killed in an instant. How dare you kill senior brother Zhao Qi? How dare you kill a disciple of the Saint Martial sect? You must be tired of living. The three disciples of the Saint Martial sect's legs trembled. They were both shocked and furious. Although they spoke harshly, they kept retreating. Even Zhao Qi was killed. They were probably no match for this spear-wielding man. Naturally, they did not dare to face him. Don't worry. You guys can go with Zhao Qi. Zhuan did not waste any time. He took a step forward and came behind the three of them. His right hand pulled out the long spear on his back and slashed horizontally. Pucci. Chapter 1446. Refining the Supreme Saint Gold Corpucci. Fresh blood exploded and scattered in the air. The three disciples of the sacred martial sect didn't even have the chance to make a sound before being killed by Zhuowen. Who is this guy? Why is he so terrifying? DG and the other two swallowed hard, their eyes glazed over. Whether it was Zhao Qi or the three disciples of the sacred martial sect, they couldn't even last one move against the young man with the spear. Putting away his spear, Huan glanced at DG and the other two and planned to leave. This time, he planned to enter the 9th Netherworld realm again. Currently, his Buddhist doppelganger was at the Great Thunderclap Temple in the Divine Netherworld realm. Because Master Xian Exin had taught him personally, his Buddhist doppelganger had broken through very quickly and reached the half-saint level. Moreover, with Master Xian Exin's help, his Buddhist doppelganger had mastered the law of karma. This law focused on the cycle of karma and was an extremely powerful and special law. With Master Xian Exin's meticulous training, his Buddhist doppelganger's strength had reached an unfathomable level. As for the demonic doppelganger, he and Taimo Lord had been cultivating on a deserted island in the desolate Netherworld realm. That island was where demonic cultivators gathered, and the strong preyed on the weak. Those who were weak couldn't survive on the deserted island. The demonic doppelganger and Taimo Lord were both geniuses of demonic cultivation. Therefore, after joining the island, they were specially trained. The demonic doppelganger changed his name to Emowen. Emowen's name was like thunder on the deserted island. He was very famous even in the entire 9th Netherworld realm. This was because Emowen had once provoked many demonic cultivators on the deserted island. 3 half-saint demonic cultivators teamed up to kill Emowen, but they were all killed instead. At that time, Emowen's cultivation hadn't reached the half-saint level yet. He was only an invincible demon emperor. Now that he was a half-saint, his strength was probably even more terrifying. In the entire 9th Netherworld realm, Emowen was considered a top genius. It was said that Emowen had even begun to challenge the number 1 genius on the deserted island, Guisha. Zhuan didn't pay much attention to the 2 doppelganger. After all, his main consciousness was in his main body. However, he planned to bring both doppelganger to the Netherworld conference. Although the Buddhist avatar and the demonic Tao avatar were not in the same place, they would often communicate through spiritual sense in the past 5 years. These two doppelgangers were separated from the Buddha demon eye. The Buddha demon eye was too profound, and Juan had yet to fully comprehend it. However, Juan believed that if these two doppelgangers were to become saints, the power of the Buddha demon eye would finally be revealed. Brother, thank you for saving our lives this time. The three of us are disciples of the hidden spirit mountain in the martial serene realm. May I know your name? Which power are you from? While Juan was deep in thought, Diji and the other two had already flashed before Juan, and the three of them spoke carefully. You are also from the martial dark realm? Originally, Juan did not want to bother with Diji and the other two. However, when he heard that the three of them were also disciples of the martial dark realm faction, his interest was immediately piqued. Back then, the sect master of the martial nether realm's sacred martial sect, Wu Ho, was the one who was the most proactive in dealing with the Azure Dragon Palace. This was also the main reason why Zhuan killed all the disciples of the sacred martial sect. My name is Qin Wen. I don't belong to any sect. I'm just a rogue cultivator, Zhuan said with a smile. The reason why Zhuan's attitude changed so quickly was that he had changed his mind and planned to enter the martial dark realm. Since he wanted revenge, he would start with the sacred martial sect. At least before the 9 Underworld Convention, he would deal a heavy blow to the sacred martial sect. Don't belong to any sect? Diji and the other two's eyes lit up, and their expressions became enthusiastic. A rogue cultivator who could cultivate to the 7th level of the martial emperor realm was extremely talented. In addition to the combat strength that Zhuan had just displayed, the three of them wanted to rope him in. The hidden spirit mountain was below the sacred martial sect in the martial dark realm. Their average strength was much weaker than the sacred martial sect, and the number of high-level martial emperors was even fewer. Diji and the other two were 6th-level martial emperors, and they were already nurtured as core disciples in the hidden spirit mountain. However, they were still nothing compared to Zhao Qi, an outer disciple of the sacred martial sect. This showed how big the gap between the two forces was. If they could rope this young man with a spear in front of them into the hidden spirit mountain, it would definitely be a great merit. Therefore, the three of them were a little restless. Brother Qin, our hidden spirit mountain's power in the martial dark realm is not weak. If you join us, you will immediately become the focus of cultivation. The sect's resources will be tilted towards you, Diji suddenly said. Zhuan naturally saw the expressions in their eyes. He smiled faintly and said, I appreciate Brother D's kind intentions. However, I prefer freedom and freedom. I don't want to be restrained, so, Diji suddenly showed a trace of disappointment. Zhuan's words were very clear. He would definitely not join the hidden spirit mountain. However, Diji was still unwilling to give up. Brother Qin, you saved our lives after all. Why don't you come to our hidden spirit mountain as a guest? Zhuan grinned. He was waiting for Diji to say this. Since he planned to take revenge on the sacred martial sect, he naturally planned to enter the martial dark realm. However, he was not familiar with the sacred martial sect, so he naturally needed a better guide. Diji and the other two were undoubtedly the guides that Zhuan had his eyes on. Since that's the case, then this Qin will accept deferentially, Zhuan replied straightforwardly. Diji was delighted and said, Then, Brother Qin, follow us to the martial dark realm. Thus, the four of them flew towards the entrance of the martial dark realm while talking and laughing. Of course, most of the time, it was Diji who was talking while Zhuan listened silently. The martial dark realm's small world was not much different from the divine dark realm. The only difference was that the scenery and architectural style inside were different. After a series of procedures, the four of them successfully entered the martial dark realm. Then, Yi led Zhuan and the others to the hidden spirit mountain. The hidden spirit mountain was located in the western region of the martial dark realm, while the sacred martial sect was in the central region. It was also the most prosperous area in the entire martial dark realm. Diji, the three of you are actually not dead? At the entrance of the hidden spirit mountain, a young man with long sleeves stared at Diji and the other two in surprise. Diji's face darkened as he said coldly, Jingbin, what do you mean by this? Are you hoping that I will die early? The young man named Jingbin waved his hand and said, No, I heard that you were being chased by the #1 outer disciple of the sacred martial sect, Zhao Qi. I thought that you were doomed, so I subconsciously spoke. Of course, it's best that you are fine. Although he said that, Jingbin felt that it was strange. Zhao Qi was a 7th-level Emperor Realm expert after all. Logically speaking, Di and the other two would not be able to escape from Zhao Qi's evil hands. Moreover, according to Zhao Qi's character, he would not leave anyone alive. Now that Di and the other two appeared in the hidden spirit mountain safe and sound, Jingbin was naturally puzzled. Oh right, who is this person? He doesn't seem to be a disciple of the hidden spirit mountain, right? Jingbin quickly changed the topic and pointed at Zhuan, who was beside Di. He is my friend Qinwen. He came to the hidden spirit mountain as a guest. Are you going to interfere in this matter? Di said coldly. Jingbin was stunned and immediately waved his hand embarrassedly. Since he was Di's friend, he should not interfere. After all, the latter's position in the hidden spirit mountain was higher than his. Brother Qin, let's go. After he finished speaking, Di ignored Jingbin's ugly expression and brushed past Jingbin with Zhuowen. Looking at the backs of Di and the other three, Jingbin narrowed his eyes and muttered, How strange. With Zhao Qi's character, it is unlikely that he would leave anyone alive. How did Di escape? If Di doesn't die, I, Jingbin, will be suppressed by him in the hidden spirit mountain. I have to go to the sacred martial sect to confirm Zhao Qi's situation. With that, Jingbin turned into a shadow and left the hidden spirit mountain. After entering the hidden spirit mountain, the woman and the other young man who followed Di all said goodbye and returned to their respective residences. Di very politely brought Zhuan to the courtyard where he lived. Brother Qin, how about you rest in the shelter for a few days? Di asked politely. Zhuan smiled slightly and said, Then I'll have to trouble Brother Di. Also, I'm quite curious about the sacred martial sect in the martial nether realm. I hope that Brother Di can bring me to the area where the sacred martial sect is located. Di was startled and immediately nodded, patting his chest and agreeing. However, Di felt a little strange. He knew that the former had just killed a disciple of the sacred martial sect, and now he was planning to visit the sacred martial sect. It was indeed a little confusing. If Di knew that Zhuowen was going to deal with the sacred martial sect this time, he probably wouldn't have agreed to bring Zhuowen to the sacred martial sect even if he was beaten to death. After the two of them chatted for a while, Di arranged a room for Zhuowen to stay for a few days. Zhuowen naturally had no objections to this. He could use these few days to try to consume the great sage gold core. If he could smoothly break through to the saint realm under the medicinal power of the great sage gold core, that would be the best. If it didn't work, he could only wait for the 9 Nether Conference to seize the Saint luck. In the dark room, Zhuowen sat cross-legged on a futon. In his room, countless ripples flickered and flowed like ripples in the water. These ripples were the array restriction. The Great Sage Gold Core was a peerless immortal pill, and its medicinal power was strong and terrifying. If he didn't set up an origin array to isolate it, he was afraid that it would directly alarm the entire Hidden Soul Mountain. With a flick of Zhuowen's finger, a dazzling golden pill floated in front of Zhuowen. The dazzling golden light constantly flashed, and a lifelike figure appeared above the pill, looking exceptionally mighty. As expected of a peerless immortal pill. Just the medicinal fragrance on the surface has some refreshing effects. Zhuowen's eyes shone brightly. It's too wasteful to consume a peerless immortal pill directly. Use your immortal energy to slowly refine the medicinal power, then absorb it into your body's acupuncture points and use it for yourself. Xiao He suddenly said. I know. Zhuowen nodded. Rolling immortal energy surged out, and a milky white light enveloped the great sage gold core, silently refining it. Chapter 1447. Zhao gained the central region of the martial dark realm. There was a huge group of palaces. There were many pavilions, mountains, and smoke lingered around. It was a beautiful sight. This group of palaces was the largest force in the martial dark realm, the sacred martial sect. The sacred martial sect was located in a huge city. The city was extremely large, and the streets were crisscrossed with people. It was bustling with life. In a rather large pavilion in the sacred martial sect, Zhengbin carefully stood outside the door with a respectful expression. Our outer region general manager allows you to enter. The two guards at the door glanced at Zhengbin indifferently and said calmly. Zhengbin hurriedly nodded his head. Soon after, he entered the pavilion. The interior of the pavilion was well lit and extremely bright. A middle-aged man with an oppressive expression was seated at the head of the hall. You're a disciple of the Hidden Spirit Mountain? You said that you have clues about Zhaoqi? The middle-aged man stared at Zhengbin sternly, causing Zhengbin to tremble. He quickly said, Yes. I heard that Senior Zhaoqi's whereabouts were unknown in the Martial Saint City, so it's not that his whereabouts are unknown, but that he was killed. The middle-aged man coldly interrupted Zhengbin's words with a hint of killing intent in his eyes. Zhengbin's eyes were dull, and he could not believe it. Zhaoqi was the #1 outer region disciple of the sacred martial sect, and his cultivation was at the 7th level martial emperor realm. It was said that he would be taken in as an inner region disciple soon. He was considered a famous genius in the martial dark realm. However, the outer region general manager said that Zhaoqi was dead. This news was too shocking for Zhengbin. This was because he knew that Zhaoqi was chasing after Diji and the other two. However, Diji and the other two returned safely to the Hidden Spirit Mountain, but Zhaoqi died in an accident. What did this mean? It meant that Zhaoqi was most likely killed by Diji. How is this possible? Diji is only at the 6th level martial emperor realm. He shouldn't have the ability to kill Zhaoqi. Zhengbin panicked and muttered to himself. The middle-aged man's eyes became sharper, and terrifying killing intent shrouded Zhengbin. He grinned and said, Tell me about your so-called clues. If you can't satisfy me, your fate? Speaking until here, the middle-aged man suddenly clenched his right hand, and the armrest on his right turned into dust. Zhengbin was so frightened that he trembled. Actually, it's like this. Zhengbin was so scared that he immediately told him everything he knew. The middle-aged man in front of him was not simple. This middle-aged man's name was Zhaogu. He was the manager of the outer layer of the Saint Martial sect. He was in charge of all the affairs of the outer layer. His cultivation base was extremely powerful, reaching the 9th level of the monarch realm. Although there was a gap between Zhaogu and the inner elders, Zhao Jiyi's status was quite high. Ordinary inner disciples were also quite courteous to him and did not dare to slight him. Most importantly, Zhaoqi was Zhao Jiyi's nephew. It could be said that Zhaoqi was personally groomed by Zhaogu, and Zhaogu had placed a lot of expectations on him. If there were no accidents, Zhaoqi would soon become an inner disciple of the Sanctum sect. By then, Zhaogu would be able to bask in the glory as well. But now that Zhaoqi was dead, everything had turned into bubbles. How could Zhaogu be willing to give up? You're saying that Zhaoqi brought 3 Saint Martial sect disciples to hunt down Diji and the other 2 from Hidden Spirit Mountain, and that Diji and the other 2 were safe and sound? When exactly? Zhaogu asked coldly. When I left Hidden Spirit Mountain, it should be 3 days ago. Zhengbin said in a low voice. 3 days ago? It seems that Zhaoqi's death is related to those 3 little bastards. Come with me to Hidden Spirit Mountain. Zhaogu stood up abruptly and glanced at Zhengbin indifferently. Zhengbin was a little hesitant. If you don't go, then die. Zhaogu spat out another sentence, causing Zhengbin to tremble all over. He had no choice but to agree. Outside Zhuowen's room, Diji frowned and paced back and forth. He did not dare to enter. Today, Di planned to ask Zhuowen to come out and take him to the Saint City where the Sanctum sect was located. However, just as he was about to open the door, it was pushed open by an extremely strong restrictive force. Is Brother Qin an Arcana master? How could he set up such a strong restrictive force outside the room? Diji muttered to himself in shock. Zhuowen looked a few years younger than him. Not only was his cultivation higher than him, but he was also a mysterious Arcana master. This made Diji inexplicably shocked. It seems that I can only look for Brother Qin in a few days. Diji also knew that since Yuan set up a restrictive force outside, his purpose was to not be disturbed. If he rashly barged in again, it would be impolite. However, just as Diji was about to leave the loft, a beautiful figure ran over from the small path outside the loft. When she came close, Di discovered that it was actually Qi Tong, the junior sister who had been chased by Zhao Qi. Senior brother, why did the sect leader suddenly summon you, senior brother Zhou Shu, and me to the Tsang Ling Palace together? Qi Tong was a little out of breath. The sect leader summoned us? Is there something important? Di Ji was a little puzzled. I'm not sure about this. By the way, where is Qinwen? Qi Tong shook her head slightly. Di Ji said, Brother Qin is now in seclusion. He can't come out yet. I see. Let's go to the Tsang Ling Palace first. Qi Tong nodded and said casually. And let's go. Di Ji and Qi Tong soon arrived at the Tsang Ling Palace. This palace was the place where the sect leader usually met with important guests. Di Ji was a little puzzled as to why the sect leader had summoned the three of them here. In the Tsang Ling Palace, Zhao Gu sat quietly at the head of the table, leisurely sipping the tea in his hand. Behind Zhao Gu, there were 4 figures with powerful auras. The 4 of them were high-level martial emperors, exuding majestic emperor auras. In the corner of the palace, Zheng Bin stood silently, not daring to make the slightest movement. Next to Zhao Gu sat a figure. This figure was an old man about 60 years old, wearing a loose robe with long sleeves. At this moment, he was politely conversing with Zhao Gu. In front of these 2 people, in the center of the palace, knelt a lonely figure. If one looked carefully, this figure was the young man who was with Di Ji and Qi Tong, Zhou Shu. At this moment, Zhou Shu's head was slightly lowered, his eyes looking straight at the ground. Cold sweat kept dripping from his forehead. As soon as Di Ji and Qi Tong walked in, they saw this scene, especially after seeing Zhou Shu kneeling on the ground. Both of their faces froze. You're finally here. Zhao Gu stopped talking with the old man and gently put down his teacup. His sharp gaze fell on Di Ji and Qi Tong. Di Qi Tong, the 2 of you come here and kneel. The old man stood up, pointed at Di Ji and Qi Tong, and ordered indifferently. Sect leader, what is the meaning of this? Di Ji frowned slightly. I told you to kneel. Don't you understand? The old man's eyes were indifferent, and a terrifying pressure was released. Di Ji and Qi Tong immediately groaned and knelt on the ground. After doing this, the old man smiled at Zhao Gu, who was beside him, and said, Steward Zhao, I've called these 3 people over. If you have any questions, just ask. This old man was naturally the sect leader of the Hidden Soul Mountain, Yin Shuai. His cultivation had reached the level of an invincible emperor lord. Although his cultivation level was higher than Zhao Ji's, his attitude was extremely polite. The reason was that Zhao Gu was the outer steward of the sacred martial sect. Moreover, Zhao Gu had a lot of connections in the sacred martial sect. Naturally, Yin Shuai would not dare to be impolite to Zhao Gu. Thank you, sect leader Yin. Zhao Gu smiled slightly, then stepped in front of the 3 kneeling Di Ji and asked indifferently, I heard that you were chased by my nephew, Zhao Qi? Di Ji and the other 2's pupils shrank, and their bodies trembled uncontrollably. They did not expect Zhao Qi to be this middle-aged man's nephew. From Yin Shuai's attitude, it was not hard to tell that this middle-aged man had a high position in the sacred martial sect. It's over. This was the thought that appeared in the 3's minds. Zheng Bin, who was standing in the corner, sneered. He knew that Di Ji and the other 2 were finished. However, he did not expect Di Ji and the other 2 to be able to kill Zhao Qi. After all, Zhao Qi was an outer genius of the sacred martial sect. My nephew, Zhao Qi's life tablet suddenly shattered a few days ago. At that time, he was chasing after the 3 of you, right? Zhao Ji's eyes became sharper. He had already noticed the abnormalities of Di Ji and the other 2, and guessed that Zhao Qi's death might have something to do with them. Of course, he had the same doubts as Zheng Bin. Zheng Bin and the other 2's cultivation were not as high as Zhao Qi's, so how did they kill Zhao Qi? Zhao Qi was not killed by us. Zhou Shu trembled and suddenly shouted, "Oh, you didn't kill him? Then who killed him?" Zhao Ji's eyes narrowed and continued to ask. Di Ji's hands trembled, and he suddenly raised his head and said, "I killed Zhao Qi, and it has nothing to do with junior sister Qi Tong and junior brother Zhou Shu?" Senior brother Di Ji. Qi Tong and Zhou Shu raised their heads and looked at Di Ji in surprise. Bang! Just as Di Ji finished speaking, Zhao Gu suddenly kicked over and heavily stepped on Di Ji's chest. "A 6th-level martial emperor trash killed Zhao Qi? Do you take me for a fool?" Zhao Ji's eyes were fierce. Di spat out a mouthful of blood, but stubbornly said, "I killed Zhao Qi. You can kill me if you want." Good, good, good. Zhao Gu laughed instead of being angry and sent Di Ji flying with a kick. Di clutched his abdomen in pain and his body spasmed. Zhao Gu was a 9th-level emperor realm. How powerful was his strength? How could he possibly be what Di Ji could withstand? "If he won't talk, then it'll be the two of you." As he spoke, Zhao Gu lifted Qi Tong and Zhou Shu, and his cold, killing intent locked onto them. At the head of the table, Yin Shuahai frowned slightly, but he did not stop them. Zhao Gu had great influence in the sacred martial sect, and the hidden spirit mountain was far inferior to the sacred martial sect. Yin Shuahai naturally would not offend Zhao Gu for a few disciples. Chapter 1448. Yin Shuahai Qinwen? Who is that? Where is he? Zhao Ji's gaze was gloomy as he hurriedly questioned. "He's in senior brother Di Ji's pavilion." "I'm willing to bring you there," Zhou Shu hurriedly said. "Brother Yin, the 3 disciples of your hidden spirit mountain are becoming more and more outrageous. They're actually harboring a murderer," Zhao Gu said with an ugly expression. Yin Shuahai frowned and said, "Brother Zhao, don't be impatient. I'll give you an explanation for this." As he spoke, Yin Shuahai arrived before Di Ji and said indifferently, "Di Ji, I heard from Zhou Shu that you're the one who's harboring Qinwen. You still have a chance to hand Qinwen over. Otherwise, it'll be too late for regrets." Di stared at Yin Shuahai and said dryly, "Sect Master, you should know when Zhao Qi chased after the 3 of us, right? But you didn't care. Qinwen is my savior. He saved our lives." "Haha, but now, because of Zhao Ji's words, not only do you not care about the life and death of our disciples, but you also want us to take out Qinwen. Are you really the sect master of our hidden spirit mountain?" Di Ji's words were filled with ridicule. Yin Shuahai's face instantly turned gloomy as he coldly said, "How presumptuous! How dare you speak to me like that?" As he spoke, Yin Shuahai waved his sleeve. Di Ji was caught off guard and was instantly hit by the power. He vomited a mouthful of blood and was directly sent flying before heavily smashing into the ground. "Brother Zhao, come with me. This traitorous disciple is too daring. He actually dares to harbor a murderer," Yin Shuahai said to Zhao Gu. He grabbed Di Ji and leaped out of its Songling Hall. "Follow me." Zhao Gu fiercely threw Zhou Shu and Qi Tong to the ground. He instructed the 4 people behind him and followed Yin Shuahai. "Qinwen should be the youth that Di Ji brought over. Let's follow them and watch the show." Zheng Bin grinned and also left the Songling Hall. Swoosh, swoosh. The group flew past the hidden spirit mountain and quickly arrived at Di Ji's pavilion. During this time, they attracted the attention of many disciples. "What's going on? That's the sect master, right? Also, sect master is carrying senior martial brother Di Ji. What happened?" Many disciples of the hidden spirit mountain were puzzled as they discussed among themselves. Obviously, Yin Shuahai's appearance had aroused their interest and doubts. "Let's go and take a look." Thus, many disciples followed behind Yin Shuahai and gathered around Di Ji's loft. Yin Shuahai threw Di Ji to the ground and said coldly, "Traitor, you still have one more chance. Call Qinwen out for me, and this sect master and brother Zhao will not pursue this matter." Zhao Gu, who had rushed over from behind, naturally heard those words as well. He frowned slightly. It was obvious that Yin Shuahai was trying to protect Di Ji. However, he didn't really care. His goal was to kill Zhao Qi's murderer. After all, it was indeed extremely rude to kill someone's disciple in their territory. Zhao Gu would not go so far as to not give Yin Shuahai face. Di staggered as he stood up. He stared at Yin Shuahai as a desolate smile appeared on his face. He had finally seen through Yin Shuahai. The latter was a person who bullied the weak and feared the strong. Just as Di was about to speak, the sound of the door opening came from the loft behind him. Then, a slender figure slowly walked out and appeared before everyone's eyes. Bush, 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 bush. Everyone's gaze fell on the figure. Yin Shuahai and Zhao Gu were no exception. Di, on the other hand, was somewhat anxious. He did not expect that Zhuowen would actually appear at this juncture. This was really taking the initiative to throw himself at the muzzle of the gun. "You're Qinwen, right?" Yin Shuahai's eyes were sharp. He could see the anxiety in Diji's eyes at a glance. He took a step forward and stood 10 meters away from Zhuowen. He raised his chin and said condescendingly. Zhuowen's aura was completely reined in. During the 5 days he had been in the residence, he had spent most of his time assimilating the gold core of the great sage gold core. Finally, he had completely absorbed the medicinal strength of the gold core. However, he was disappointed that he still did not make a breakthrough. However, he had stabilized his sage to be realm and raised it to the peak state. He was only half a step away from the sage realm. Now, Zhuowen finally knew how difficult it was for him to make the pilgrimage realm. Although he still had a supreme saint gold core, he did not dare to use it recklessly. Now that he had broken through the pilgrimage realm, it was not his foundation, but a trace of opportunity. No matter how much medicinal efficacy he consumed, it would be difficult for him to make a breakthrough. After refining the supreme saint gold core, Zhuowen naturally would not continue to stay in the room. He immediately pushed the door open and saw this scene. In particular, this Yin Shuahai was actually acting tough in front of him, which made Zhuowen's eyes look a little strange. "Who are you?" Zhuowen frowned and asked indifferently. Yin Shuahai's face stiffened. This young man in front of him was in his sect, but he did not know who he was. This was definitely a great irony. "I'm the sect master of Hidden Soul Mountain. I asked you a question just now. You haven't answered me yet." Yin Shuahai said coldly. Zhuowen was stunned. He did not expect this Yin Shuahai in front of him to be so aggressive. It seemed that he, Zhuowen, had never seen this Yin Shuahai before. "I'm Qinwen. Are you looking for me?" Zhuowen said indifferently. "So it's Qinwen. That Zhao Qi was killed by you, right? Now hurry up and kneel down and apologize to Brother Zhao. Then bind your hands and let Brother Zhao deal with you. This is your only choice to live." Yin Shuahai said casually. Zhao Gu stepped forward and stared coldly at Zhuowen. "You've got guts. You actually dared to kill Zhao Qi. Don't you know that he's a disciple of Saint Martial sect?" "I know. That's why I killed him." Zhuowen's answer immediately shocked everyone. This guy actually admitted it openly, and in front of Zhao Gu. This was a disguised slap in the face. Zhao Gu was silent for a moment. Then, instead of being angry, he laughed. "You've got guts. You actually dare to admit that you killed Zhao Qi in front of me. Do you know my relationship with Zhao Qi? What does your relationship with Zhao Qi have to do with me? You've said so much nonsense. Don't you just want to take revenge?" Zhuowen said indifferently. There was no other emotion on his face. "You've got guts. Zhao Qi is my nephew. You killed him. Today I'll kill you. Take this guy down." The veins on Zhao Ji's forehead bulged. He wanted to see fear, regret, or other negative emotions in Zhuowen's eyes. However, to his disappointment, Zhuowen was indifferent. Therefore he was furious. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. As soon as Zhao Ji's words came out, the 4 men behind him nodded in agreement. They split into 4 directions and surrounded Zhuowen. 4 powerful emperor auras spread out. 4 high-level martial emperors? Diji's face turned pale. He didn't expect Zhao Gu to bring 4 high-level martial emperors. Although Zhuowen had killed high-level martial emperors before, it was only Zhao Qi alone. Now that the 4 of them had joined forces, could Zhuowen really stop them? Puchi. The sound of a sharp weapon piercing flesh rang out continuously, followed by the sound of 4 heavy objects falling to the ground. Bang 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 bang. A shocking scene immediately appeared before everyone. Zhuowen reached out with his right hand and pulled out the tiger head deep golden spear. With a flash of light, The 4 people surrounding him collapsed to the ground. This instant kill? Seeing the 4 men's auras disappear in an instant, DG froze on the spot. The surrounding disciples also forgot to speak. Even Zhao Gu and Yin Shuahai were dumbfounded at this moment. You killed them? Zhao Gu roared with a ferocious glint in his eyes. Zhuowen replied indifferently. Then, he took out a handkerchief and wiped the blood off the tip of the spear nonchalantly. Sect Master Yin, this kid dares to kill people in your sect. He doesn't put Hidden Spirit Mountain in his eyes. Let's take him down together. Let's see if he can still be so arrogant then. Zhao Gu suddenly turned to Yin Shuahai. Although Zhao Gu was a 9th-level martial emperor, Zhuowen's attack was too fast. That simple spear strike had smoothly pierced through the vital points of the 4 high-level martial emperors, killing them instantly. Although Zhao Gu was confident, he knew that he couldn't do the same as Zhuowen's attack, so he immediately went to Yin Shuahai. Yin Shuahai was an invincible martial emperor who had mastered the power of law. With his help, it would be easy to take down this young man. Yin Shuahai frowned slightly. Zhuowen's strength had exceeded his expectations. He had thought that this young man was just an ordinary 7th-level martial emperor. He didn't expect him to be able to kill 4 high-level martial emperors in an instant. Sect Master Yin, haven't you always wanted to expand Hidden Spirit Mountain's business to St. Martial City? If you help me, I can give you a piece of land in St. Martial City for you to do business there. What do you think? Seeing Yin Shuahai hesitate, Zhao Gu gritted his teeth and said to him, "Deal." Yin Shuahai immediately agreed. This world was full of benefits. As long as there were enough benefits, Yin Shuahai naturally wouldn't refuse. In fact, it was a good deal for him. Brother Zhao, you're too polite. This kid dares to cause trouble in Hidden Spirit Mountain. He's too audacious. Today, I'll kill him with my own hands. With that, Yin Shuahai put his hands behind his back and took a step forward. Immediately, he appeared above Zhuowen. Boom! Yin Shuahai pressed down with his right hand. Suddenly, the power of the law spread out. Then, everyone felt the ground trembling violently as if something was about to break out of its shell. Sect Master is using the law of Earth. Looks like he's going to kill this kid directly. This kid is finished. Feeling the trembling of the ground, many disciples of Hidden Spirit Mountain were shocked and started discussing. Boom! In the midst of the discussion, countless amounts of soil gathered and turned into a huge earth dragon. Yin Shuahai stood on top of the earth dragon with his hands behind his back. He looked down at Zhuowen with pity. "Junior, you're pretty strong. But you can only blame yourself for being too arrogant. How dare you kill the people of St. Martial Sect? After you die, don't blame me. You can only blame yourself." With that, Yin Shuahai didn't waste any more time. He stomped his right foot and the earth dragon roared and swooped down. Its target was Zhuowen. The power of the law of Earth filled the air. The entire Hidden Spirit Mountain shook. Many disciples who were watching were in awe. They knew very well that under the power of the law of Earth, they were just cannon fodder. Of course, Qinwen was the same. Zhuowen was very calm. He raised the tiger head clear golden spear with his right hand. His right arm also showed traces of golden veins. Then he threw it at the earth dragon. This guy wants to fight the earth dragon head-on? He doesn't have any law power in his body. How dare he do that? He's courting death. Chapter 1449. Submission. Zhuowen didn't care about the mocking laughter around him. His attention was focused on his right arm. At that moment, he silently mobilized a part of the divine body's power. He didn't even bother to use the power of law. The tiger head clear gold spear suddenly emitted a golden light that was as hard as iron. Boom! Under everyone's gaze, the earthen dragon swooped down and instantly arrived before Zhuowen. Zhuowen's tiger head clear gold spear slammed into the earthen dragon's head. A mantis trying to stop a chariot. On the earthen dragon's head, Yin Shuahai still had his hands behind his back. Looking at the tiger head clear gold spear that was swinging towards him, he sneered and mocked. Boom! The long spear swept over and slammed into the earthen dragon's head. Immediately, the terrifying earthen dragon's body trembled and it started to cry out. Under everyone's gaze, the earthen dragon's huge head started to crack. Break! Zhuan roared. The tiger head clear gold spear slammed down and heavily hit the surface of the earthen dragon's head. Then, there was a dull sound and the earthen dragon's head was smashed into pieces. What? Yin Shuehai couldn't believe it. The moment the earthen dragon's head was smashed, he jumped and dodged the long spear. The earthen dragon cried out and then heavily smashed into the ground. Suddenly, there was an extremely dull tremor and the ground started to crack. Zhuan bounced his legs and suddenly jumped up. He instantly arrived before Yin Shuehai. Damn it! Yin Shuehai's heart trembled. He didn't expect Zhuan to be so terrifying. The earthen dragon that was formed by the law of earth was annihilated so easily. Get lost! Yin Shuehai roared. He waved his right hand and the law of earth revolved around him, forming a thick earthen shield. The law of earth originated from the earth. It had the characteristics of being thick and tough. The defense that it set up was extremely strong and tough. Yin Shuehai was extremely confident in his defense. You still have to break. Zhuan suddenly landed in front of Yin Shuehai and stomped his right foot on Yin Shuehai's chest. Only then did Yin Shuehai's twitching body calm down and was firmly pressed down by Zhuan. Hiss hiss hiss. Gasps could be heard one after another. All the disciples of Hidden Spirit Mountain were petrified and dumbstruck. Yin Shuehai was the sect master of Hidden Spirit Mountain. He was the sect master of Hidden Spirit Mountain and an invincible sovereign lord who had comprehended the laws. Now, he was defeated by a young man who was only at the 7th level of the Emperor realm. The crowd suddenly felt that this world was too crazy. How could a 7th level great emperor defeat an unrivaled monarch lord? Zhao Gu was also stunned. His eyes flickered and he slowly stepped back, but his heart was beating wildly. This Qin Wen was too strange. How could a 7th level martial emperor have such terrifying battle prowess? Even Yin Shuehai was defeated by him in a few moves. Condoning the people of other sects to bully your own disciples. What's the use of being a sect master who bullies the weak and fears the strong? Zhuan's voice was cold. He clenched his right hand and the tiger head clear golden spear was pointed at Yin Shuehai's neck. No. I am the sect master of Hidden Spirit Mountain. Do you dare to kill me? Yin Shuehai kept struggling. Ignorant idiot. Zhuan was too lazy to care about Yin Shuehai. This guy was still threatening him at this juncture. It was ridiculous. Pucci. A cold light flashed and Yin Shuehai, who was struggling, stopped moving. His head rolled on the ground and blood gushed out from it. Zhuan's right hand formed a claw and reached into Yin Shuehai's dantian. He grabbed Yin Shuehai's nascent soul and stuffed it into his spirit ring. A nascent soul was very beneficial to the Fushi cauldron. In other words, the Fushi cauldron treated the nascent soul as nourishment. It absorbed the nascent soul's energy to restore itself. Naturally, he would leave the nascent soul for the Fushi cauldron. Sect Master is dead. This guy killed Sect Master. Let's run. This lunatic killed Sect Master. The disciples of the Hidden Spirit Mountain, who were originally watching the show, all revealed expressions of fear. Soon after, they dispersed in an uproar, as if they had encountered something extremely terrifying. DG was frozen on the spot and looked at Yin Shuehai's corpse. His throat trembled and he didn't know what to say. I say, Brother Zhao Gu, aren't you here for revenge? Why aren't you here yet? An indifferent voice sounded out once again, causing Zhao Gu, who was retreating, to freeze. Run! Without saying a word, Zhao Gu stepped into the void and fled into the distance. If Yin Shuehai was dealt with so easily, then he, who was weaker, wouldn't be able to do anything. However, the moment Zhao Gu escaped 100 meters away, he was intercepted by black chains. These black chains were extremely strange. From time to time, they would let out a clear dragon's roar as if there was a giant dragon trapped in the chains. Clang! Zhao Gu roared angrily and struggled with all his might, but it was to no avail. He was directly bound by the black chain, unable to move. I'm the manager of the outer layer of the Saint Martial sect. You won't get any benefits from killing me. If you let me go, I can give you a lot of benefits. How about it? Zhao Ji's eyes were filled with fear. He quickly listed a lot of benefits to Zhuan. What benefits? Zhuan sneered. What benefits do you want? Zhao Gu gritted his teeth and asked. Zhuan's eyes flickered. He asked indifferently, do you know who the strongest disciple of the Saint Martial sect is? Zhao Gu was stunned. He didn't expect Zhuan to ask this instead of asking for an exorbitant price. The strongest disciple of the Saint Martial sect is naturally the son of Wu Ho, Wu Zhantian. He started cultivating at the age of 5 and became an emperor at the age of 10. He's now 27 and has reached the peak of the half-saint realm. He's only half a step away from becoming a sage. Zhao Gu said, 27 years old, peak of the half-saint realm? Zhuan's pupils shrank. The son of Wu Ho, Wu Zhantian's talent is really terrifying. He's not even 30 years old, but his cultivation is already so high. Other than Wu Zhantian, does the Saint Martial sect have any stronger disciples? Zhuan continued to ask. Zhao Gu frowned. He didn't know why Zhuan asked this, but for the sake of his life, he answered seriously, other than Wu Zhantian, there are 3 other direct disciples of Wu Ho. They are Mu Wendi, Lin Anyun, and Song Xian. Song Xian is the strongest of the 3 direct disciples. His cultivation is also very close to that of Wu Ho's son, Wu Zhantian. He's also a half-saint. As for Mu Wendi and Lin Anyun, they are both invincible emperor lords. However, they aren't ordinary invincible emperor lords. The power of law they control is extraordinary, far stronger than ordinary invincible emperor lords. I see. Zhuan nodded and continued, I can spare your life. Zhao Ji's face lit up, but Zhuan's next words made his face pale. However, I need you to help me lure the 3 direct disciples and Wu Zhantian out. If you can do it, I'll let you go. As he spoke, Zhuan flicked his finger and took out a pill with rolling black qi. He stuffed it into Zhao Ji's mouth without hesitation. What did you give me to eat? Zhao Gu shouted. It's a high-grade immortal pill, soul-eroding goo. This goo poison will attach itself to your dantian and feed on your nascent soul until it's completely devoured. Zhuan said indifferently. Zhao Ji's face changed. This goo poison was too insidious. It actually devoured the most important nascent soul of a cultivator. Once the nascent soul was completely devoured, Zhao Ji's life would also come to an end. Didn't you say you wouldn't kill me? Zhao Gu said in despair. I did say that I wouldn't kill you, but the premise is that you have to complete the task I gave you. After completing it, I'll help you get rid of this goo poison. Don't worry, this goo poison has an incubation period of 3 months. In the first 3 months, this goo worm won't devour your nascent soul. After 3 months, it will quickly devour your nascent soul, so you only have 3 months. Zhuan said indifferently. Zhao Gu nodded as if he was grabbing onto a life-saving straw. He said, I will definitely complete the task you gave me. Looking at Zhao Ji's appearance, Zhuan revealed a smile. He put away the heavenly dragon lock seal and said indifferently, let's go. Take me to the Saint Martial city. After regaining his freedom, Zhao Gu bowed and cupped his hands respectfully. Soon after, he left the hidden spirit mountain with Yun. Who is this Qin one? His strength is actually so terrifying. Looking at Zhuan and Zhao Gu leaving, Diji's gaze was extremely complicated. He was sure that Qin Wen was definitely not a simple rogue cultivator. How could a rogue cultivator's strength be so terrifying? But the hidden spirit mountain is completely finished. Regaining his senses, Diji looked at the completely chaotic hidden spirit mountain and sighed deeply. He knew that this was mainly because of Yin Shuehai's own actions. The Saint Martial city was bustling with noise and excitement. 2 streaks of light flew over from the horizon and quickly stopped at the entrance of the Saint Martial city. Lord Qin, this is the Saint Martial city. I have bought a lot of businesses here. Lord Qin can stay here for a while. Zhao Gu hurriedly said to Zhuan with a flattering smile. Zhuan's expression did not change as he said indifferently, you have to complete the task I gave you as soon as possible. You only have 3 months. Zhao Ji's expression changed slightly. He immediately smiled and said, "Lord Qin, don't worry. I will definitely do it for you. Let's enter the city first." Zhuan nodded, and then Zhao Gu led Zhuan into the Saint Martial City. Chapter 1450. Life of Luxury, Life of Luxury. Zhuan narrowed his eyes as he stared at the majestic loft in front of him and the plaque on top of it. The loft was extremely large, and it was brightly lit inside. Light gauze fluttered in the wind, and from time to time, sounds of moaning and teasing could be heard. "Lord Qin, Life of Luxury is one of my biggest businesses. Please come in and have a seat." Zhao Gu smiled flatteringly. Zhuan didn't refuse and walked into the loft. It was very spacious inside, and there were many people walking around. However, most of them were women in gauze, and their faintly discernible figures attracted many people's attention. After Zhuan entered Life of Luxury, Zhao Ge had been observing him. When he found that the former wasn't moved at all, his eyes flickered. "Give me one of the best rooms," Zhuan suddenly said. "Okay, I'll do it right away." Zhao Ge hurriedly nodded his head and came to a counter. On the counter stood a young woman who still retained her charm. Seeing Zhao Gu come, the young woman took the initiative and leaned her graceful body against Zhao Gu. "Io, why didn't you inform me that Lord Zhao is coming?" The young woman smiled. Zhao Gu wasn't in the mood to get close to this young woman. He said indifferently, "Hurry up and give me the best room for this lord." The young woman was startled, and then her beautiful eyes glanced at Zhuan behind Zhao Gu. Seeing the latter's tall and handsome figure, and Zhao Ji's respectful attitude towards him, she knew that this young man was very likely an outstanding disciple of the sacred martial sect. "Don't worry, Lord Zhao. I'll give this young master the biggest room immediately." The young woman winked at Zhuowen and returned to the counter. She took out a jade tablet and placed it in front of Zhuowen. She leaned in close to Zhuowen and placed the jade tablet in Zhuowen's hand. She exhaled and said, "Young master, this is the sky room number 1. It's the best room in the Life of Luxury." As the young woman spoke, she lowered her body slightly and purposely revealed her ample bosom. Zhuan naturally noticed the young woman's small movements, but he didn't mind. He said, "Zhao Gu, take me there." "Sai, Mr. Qin, I'll take you there right away." Zhao Gu hurriedly nodded and bowed, leading Zhuowen towards sky number 1. That respectful attitude of his made the young woman stare blankly. The young woman was well aware of Zhao Ji's identity. He was the outer supervisor of the sacred martial sect and a 9th-level martial emperor. Even the inner disciples of the sacred martial sect did not have the qualifications to make Zhao Gu speak so humbly. Only the 3 personal disciples of Wu Ho, as well as Wu Ho's son, Wu Zhantian, would be able to make Zhao Gu act so respectfully. "This kid's surname is Qin. I don't think there's anyone with the surname Qin in the Saint Martial sect, right? Who is this child?" The more the young woman thought about it, the stranger she felt. Within the Sky Room 1, Zhuowen said indifferently, "Within 10 days, you have to lure out at least 1 personal disciple. Of course, it would be best if you could lure out all 3 personal disciples. This is an order." Zhao Ji's expression changed slightly, but when he saw Zhuowen's cold expression, he could only bite the bullet and nod. After giving a few more instructions, Zhao Gu left the Sky Room 1. Zhuowen's eyes flickered. Previously, Yuan had never thought of a good way to take revenge on the sacred martial sect. Now that he had Zhao Gu, it was a lot more convenient. Wu Ho was a saint in the profound sage realm. With Zhuowen's current strength, it was impossible for him to kill a saint. However, although he could not kill the old one, Yuan could kill the young one. His goal was Wu Ho's 3 personal disciples and Wu Zhantian. These 4 people should be the main force of the sacred martial sect in the 9 Nether Conference. If the 4 of them were killed, the Saint Martial sect's Wu Ho would definitely explode in anger, and Zhuowen's goal would be achieved. As for Wu Ho, Yuan planned to deal with him after he broke through to the Saint Realm. "Who is it?" Suddenly, Zhuowen's eyes became sharp as he stared at a certain spot in the room. His voice was extremely cold. "Yo, why is young master so fierce? I'm just here to take a look." A soft snort was heard as she slowly walked in from the door of the room. It was the charming young woman whom he had met at the counter. "May I know why you're here?" Zhuowen said indifferently. The young woman smiled and suddenly came in front of Zhuan. A pair of white jade-like hands gently landed on Zhuowen's chest. This young woman looked quite old, but she took good care of herself. Her arms were white and flawless, like mutton fat jade. They were extremely smooth, giving people the urge to touch them. Zhuan narrowed his eyes. He knew that this woman must have seen Zhao Ji's respectful attitude towards him, so she came to curry favor. A gust of wind swept out from Zhuowen's body. The young woman screamed and retreated dozens of steps, sitting on the ground. Scram. Zhuan sat upright on the meditation cushion and looked down at the young woman. His gaze was piercingly cold, and it was bone-piercingly cold like the dead of winter. The young woman let out a muffled groan and spat out a mouthful of blood. The gust of wind that swept out from Zhuan earlier was extremely strong. Even though it was only intended to push her away, it still caused her to suffer a certain degree of internal injury. The young woman's beautiful face flushed red, and she left Zhuowen's room dejectedly. After the young woman left, Zhuan flicked his sleeve and instantly set up a rather powerful restriction in the room. After that, Zhuan started to meditate and cultivate while silently waiting for news from Zhaoge. Days passed by. 7 days later, Zhuan suddenly opened his eyes within the room, and his gaze emitted a blazing bright light. After that, he flipped his right hand and withdrew a communication jade talisman. "Lord Qin, I've already found an opportunity to lure Mu Wendi, Lin Anyun, and Song Xian out of St. Martial City. You can wait for an opportunity to make a move. It wouldn't be too late to make a move after they're further away." Zhao Ji's voice sounded out from the communication jade talisman. Zhaoge has lured out all 3 of his direct disciples in one go? Zhuan narrowed his eyes. After pondering for a while, he stood up and pushed open the door, leaving life of luxury. Zhaoge had already sent his location to him through the communication jade talisman, so Zhuan quickly chased after him after leaving St. Martial City. There was a rather large stone forest around 100 kilometers away from St. Martial City. Rocks that rose into the sky were piled up in a picturesque manner, forming a unique landscape. 4 figures slowly walked through the stone forest. The person in the lead was Zhaoge. There were 3 people behind Zhaoge. They were 2 men and a woman. Their presences were extremely tremendous and terrifying. The black-clothed man in his late 20s had the most terrifying presence. This black-clothed man had a dignified temperament. The other 2 subconsciously followed behind this black-clothed man. The black-clothed man suddenly stopped and stared at Zhaoge. "Zhaoge, you said that you sensed a powerful presence in this stone forest. Moreover, the presence contained a wisp of saint might. You suspected it to be a profound saint artifact. How do you explain that after searching for so long, we still haven't found it?" Zhaoge trembled and hurriedly bowed. "Lord Song Xian, this lowly one isn't lying. When this lowly one passed by this place last time, I did sense a wisp of saint might. However, that wisp of saint might disappeared in a flash into this stone forest. Although this lowly one is blind, I know that it's definitely something extraordinary. Only a saint artifact or a saint artifact can emit saint might." Song Xian frowned when he heard that. He said to the man and woman behind him, "Wendi, Anyun, let's split up and search. This stone forest is extremely large. If we search together, it'll be like searching for a needle in a haystack." Mu Wendi and Lin Anyun looked at each other and nodded. "Senior brother Song Xian is right. Let's split up and search. If we find it, we'll inform each other through the communication jade talisman." The 3 of them came to an agreement and ignored Zhaoge. They split into 3 different directions and disappeared into the stone forest. Zhaoge narrowed his eyes. After the 3 of them split up, he took out the communication jade talisman and sent a message. After that, he leisurely strolled through the stone forest. After witnessing Zhuowen's strength, Zhaoge knew that Mu Wendi and Lin Anyun weren't a match for Zhuowen. However, the strongest of the 3, Song Xian, was a half-saint. Even Zhuowen wouldn't be easy to deal with. The reason why Zhaoge lured all 3 of them out was naturally because he had his own plans. He hoped that both sides would suffer great losses. If that happened, the heavily injured Qin would be at his mercy. It wouldn't be difficult for him to extract the antidote for the infant corrosion parasite from Qin. It's best if both sides suffer great losses or Qin is heavily injured, Zhao Ge muttered in a low voice. He stood where he was as if he was waiting for something. Swoosh. After a short while, a black figure quickly flew over and landed in front of Zhao Ge. Lord Qin. Zhao Ge bowed respectfully. Where are the three of them? Zhuowen asked indifferently. The three of them split up to search for the so-called saint artifact, Zhao Ge said with a faint smile. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and said, They actually split up. That's good. You should know where the three of them are, right? Take me there. Yes, let's go to Lin Anyun first. Lin Anyun is the weakest of the three. She has grasped the law of fire. She's not very strong. Zhao Ge bowed and smiled. Then he led Zhuowen in the direction of Lin Anyun. In the east, there were countless sharp stone forests. Lin Anyun, who was dressed in an emerald green robe, slowly walked in the stone forest. Her beautiful eyes were constantly looking around as if she was looking for something. The saint artifact shouldn't be discovered so easily. If I can find the saint artifact, I'm afraid I can directly leave the martial dark realm and find a deserted place to secretly refine it. At that time, my strength will definitely surpass all the half-saints. Lin Anyun muttered as she walked. Clearly, she was eyeing the saint artifact. Who is it? Suddenly, Lin Anyun turned her head and stared behind her as she shouted. Lord Anyun, it's me. A sturdy figure appeared in Lin Anyun's sight. It was Zhao Ge. Zhao Ge, why are you following me? Lin Anyun asked with a frown. Lord Anyun, do you really want to get the saint artifact? I can tell you in detail the direction of the saint aura that I saw back then, Zhao Ge said with a smile. Lin Anyun's beautiful eyes narrowed as she said anxiously, Really? Tell me quickly. Lord Anyun, don't worry. I'll tell you right away. Chapter 1451. Killing a direct disciple. Swoosh. The spear was extremely fast. In just a flash, it had arrived in front of Lin Anyun. Lin Anyun's eyes narrowed slightly as she cried out. A strong sense of danger caused her to involuntarily unleash the laws of fire. In an instant, a blazing sea of fire spread out around her. Swoosh. The spear was like a venomous snake as it arrived in front of Lin Anyun at a tricky angle. Swoosh. A strange sound rang out. Then, Lin Anyun's beautiful eyes narrowed as she discovered that the sea of fire in front of her had split in half. The spear was unobstructed. How is this possible? The defense formed by the laws of fire can't even withstand a single blow? Lin Anyun shrieked. She stomped her foot and retreated rapidly. Her slender hands danced as the laws of fire gathered in front of her to block the spear. However, to her horror, the spear's might was too terrifying. Every time she condensed the laws of fire to attack, the spear would easily break through it. What's wrong with Zhao Ge? How did he become so strong? Why is he trying to kill me? Lin Anyun frowned as she began to think of retreating. Zhao Ge was too strange. She did not dare to fight him head-on. Flaming 9 gates. Without saying anything, Lin Anyun waved her hands. The laws of fire descended from the sky and transformed into 9 huge flaming gates. Rumble. A terrifying muffled sound resounded, and the ground began to tremble violently. Numerous gigantic fire doors, each of which was dozens of feet tall, were stacked in front of Zhao Ge. There was a total of 9 of them, and they were stacked layer by layer in front of Zhao Ge. Let's go! After doing all this, Lin Anyun stomped her foot and flew away. At the same time, she took out her communication jade token and immediately sent 2 messages to Mu Wendy and Song Xian. Break! An indifferent voice resounded from behind him. Immediately, 9 muffled explosions sounded. The 9 flaming gates instantly collapsed as a slender figure strode out and chased after Lin Anyun. What kind of monster is this? My flaming 9 gates was destroyed so easily? Lin Anyun, who was originally fleeing, naturally heard the commotion behind her. When she turned around and saw the shocking scene, she was greatly shocked. How did this guy's speed suddenly become so fast? It's basically teleportation. Lin Anyun's attention shifted from the door of flames to Zhao Gu, and she noticed that the latter had caught up to her as if he had teleported. He was clearly 1,000 meters away, but in the blink of an eye, he was 100 meters behind her. In the blink of an eye, he was only 10 meters away from her. Where are you looking? The moment Lin Anyun turned her attention to the back, the Zhao Gu behind her disappeared. Then, an indifferent voice came from in front of her. Lin Anyun turned her head, and her beautiful eyes narrowed slightly. She discovered that Zhao Gu, who was originally behind her, had unknowingly appeared in front of her. The long spear pierced through the void, golden light overflowing in all directions as it smashed heavily in front of Lin Anyun. Damn it! Lin Anyun cursed inwardly. With a pinch of her jade-like hand, she took out a fiery red longsword from her spirit ring. With a slash of the sword, the air was torn apart. Coupled with the law of fire, the might of the attack was multiplied. Bang! The spear and sword collided. Soon after, Lin Anyun felt her jade-like hand sink, and then the fiery red sword broke with a sound. How is this possible? Lin Anyun only had time to spit out this sentence before the long sword followed and smashed into her chest. Poochie! Lin Anyun spat out a mouthful of blood and fell from the sky, heavily smashing into the stone forest below. In the other two directions of the stone forest, two figures were constantly searching the stone forest. A communication jade token? It's from junior sister Lin. Could something have happened? Song Xian, who was dressed in black, waved his right hand and took out a communication jade token. His eyes, which were as calm as an ancient well, flickered slightly. Senior brother, hurry up and save me. I don't know what's wrong with Zhao Gu. He's actually chasing after me, and his strength has become terrifying. A crisp voice entered Song Xian's mind, causing his eyes to narrow slightly. Zhao Gu? He's only a 9th-level Great Emperor. How can he be junior sister Anyun's match? There's something fishy about this. After pondering for a moment, Song Xian put away the communication jade token and took a step forward, flying in Lin Anyun's direction. However, whether the message was real or not, at least he knew that Lin Anyun was in trouble right now. On the other side of the stone forest, Mu Wendy also put away his communication jade token and flew in Lin Anyun's direction. Rumble! Lin Anyun landed heavily on the ground, but she was quite resilient. She endured the pain and flipped over. Clang! The moment Lin Anyun flipped over, a long spear flew over and stabbed into the ground where Lin Anyun was lying on. Looking at the long spear beside her, Lin Anyun's delicate body trembled. If she had reacted a little slower, she would have been pierced by the long spear. You're not Zhao Gu. Or you? Lin Anyun stood up with difficulty, her beautiful eyes staring fixedly at the figure that was slowly walking over. Although Zhao Gu was an outer elder of the Saint Martial sect, his strength couldn't be this terrifying. Zhao Gu was expressionless. He took a step forward and appeared in front of Lin Anyun as if he had teleported. He pulled out the long spear with his right hand. The person who will kill you. After Zhao Gu finished speaking, a blazing golden light burst out from his right hand. If one looked closely, the golden light formed strange veins on his arm. Whoosh! The long spear was too fast. It was so fast that Lin Anyun couldn't catch it. No. Stop. Zhao Gu, you've gone too far. Two furious roars rushed over and resounded through the entire stone forest. Their voices were filled with shock and anger. Zhao Gu was expressionless. The long spear followed its original trajectory and swept past Lin Anyun's fair neck. Poochie! Lin Anyun's beautiful eyes were glazed. Before she could react, her head was thrown high into the air. A pillar of blood shot into the sky. Zhao Wu was ruthless. He grabbed Lin Anyun's nascent soul and placed it between his eyebrows. He planned to let the Fushi cauldron absorb the nascent soul. You're courting death. Song Xian and Mu Wendy's pupils shrank. Their eyes were filled with rage. Mu Wendy even roared like a mad wolf. Soon after, Mu Wendy was even faster than Song Xian. He arrived in front of Zhuowen in an instant and unleashed the energy of the law. But Mu Wendy roared. The energy of the law instantly enveloped Zhao Gu like invisible air. A terrifying binding force wrapped around Zhao Gu, making it impossible for him to move. You've got guts. How dare you kill junior sister Anyun? Today, I'll make you suffer a fate worse than death. Mu Wendy's eyes were bloodshot. He seemed to have lost his mind. He walked step by step toward Zhuan and pulled out a long saber with his right hand. Zhao Gu's eyes were calm. He didn't seem to be aware that he was in a desperate situation. Not far away, Song Xian slowly calmed down. His gaze fell on Zhao Gu. He was surprised when he saw the calm expression on the latter's face. Isn't Zhao Gu a little too calm? He doesn't seem like someone who's in a desperate situation. Something strange, Song Xian muttered. Just as he was about to warn Mu Wendy, a terrifying aura suddenly burst out from below. At this moment, Mu Wendy was only 3 meters away from Zhao Gu. Even the hideous smile on Mu Wendy's face could be clearly seen. But Zhao Gu suddenly revealed a trace of a strange smile. Soon after, an extremely terrifying flame erupted from his entire body and immediately shattered the binding force. Moreover, the flames adhered to the surface of Zhao Gu's body, forming numerous fire veins. Then he suddenly threw a punch at Mu Wendy. Mu Wendy's face stiffened. He hurriedly parried. He clearly didn't expect this to happen. He only had time to place the long saber in front of him to block the attack. Crack! The flaming fist arrived in an instant and slammed into the long saber. Soon after, cracks appeared on the long saber's surface. Moreover, the cracks continued to expand. In the end, the long saber shattered. The fist heavily slammed into Mu Wendy's chest. The powerful force and the scorching flames caused Mu Wendy to vomit a mouthful of blood as he was smashed to the ground. How is this possible? He shattered a high-grade emperor weapon with a single punch. What kind of monstrous strength is this? Mu Wendy struggled on the ground. Fresh blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. His eyes were fixed on Zhao Gu, filled with disbelief. Zhao Gu's movements were extremely fast, without the slightest hesitation. The moment he knocked Mu Wendy to the ground, he grabbed the long spear in his hand and fiercely spun it. The long spear spun violently and stabbed towards Mu Wendy's heart. Damn it! Junior brother Wendy! Song Xian roared. One was too fast. In the blink of an eye, Mu Wendy was knocked to the ground. Lin Anyun was dead. Song Xian naturally couldn't let Mu Wendy die in front of him. 10,000 miles of falling snow. Song Xian took a step forward. The law of ice burst out from his body. Instantly, the entire stone forest was covered in a large amount of snow. It was extremely terrifying. A wave of icy energy swept over like a hurricane, causing Zhao to stiffen. The law of ice? But you can't stop me. Zhao sneered. Another wave of law surged out from his body. Ice blue cold air soared into the sky, forming a huge snowstorm that blocked the approaching Song Xian. You also have the law of ice. In addition to the law of fire, you have mastered 2 types of law? The snowstorm was very powerful. It completely blocked Song Xian's charging figure, preventing him from approaching. Zhao ignored Song Xian. The long spear didn't slow down. With a poochie sound, the long spear pierced through Mu Wendy's chest. Mu Wendy roared. Blood spurted out from his mouth. His eyes were wide open. He died with everlasting regret. The moment the long spear pierced through his body, the vitality in his body was destroyed by the tyrannical power. Zhao put away his nascent soul. Then, he looked up at the ugly-looking Song Xian and grinned. It's your turn now. Song Xian retreated dozens of steps. His eyes were filled with fear. He couldn't see through this Zhao in front of him. "Or you?" Song Xian asked in a low voice. Chapter 1452. Song Xian where's Zhao Gu? Song Xian asked darkly. I killed him, of course, Zhuan said indifferently. Song Xian's eyes were filled with fury. He said, You've got guts. Zhao Gu is the outer supervisor of the Saint Martial sect. Wenda and Yen are both direct disciples of the martial mark. How dare you kill the 3 of them? Don't worry. It's not just them. I'll take care of you as well. Zhuowen nodded seriously. This attitude made Song Xian's face turn red. He was about to explode from anger. Although you've mastered 2 types of laws, you're just an invincible emperor lord. Aren't you being a little too arrogant? Song Xian smiled coldly. He clenched his right hand, and a palm-sized black ball appeared above his head. This black sphere contains a powerful power of law. This power of law is very familiar. Zhuan narrowed his eyes and stared at the black ball floating above Song Xian's head. Dark barrier, Song Xian said indifferently. The black ball instantly exploded. Countless black tentacles shot out in all directions. In an instant, the area within 100 miles of Zhuan was covered in darkness. If one looked from the outside, they would see a huge black ball that was 100 miles wide. Dark energy surged out of it. It looked extremely terrifying. The laws of darkness, Zhuan murmured in the empty darkness. No wonder Song Xian's power of law was so familiar. It was the laws of darkness. Long Shaoan also had the laws of darkness. Its power was extraordinary. As he spoke, powerful flames erupted around Zhuan. The darkness within a dozen feet of him was instantly dispelled by the flames. The laws of darkness is a special law. It's stronger than your laws of ice and fire combined. So what if you have 2 types of laws? Your cultivation is inferior to mine, and your laws aren't strong. You're dead. An indifferent voice rang out in the dark barrier. It echoed in Zhuowen's ears. The latter couldn't help but frown. The sound of something tearing through the air rang out behind him. Zhuowen raised his eyebrows and released his sharp perception. He suddenly bent down, and a pitch-black longsword streaked across the top of Zhuowen's head with a tearing sound. Clang! Zhuowen threw a punch behind him, smashing into the pitch-black longsword, followed by a muffled groan. What a strong brute force! To think that your physical body would be this frightening as well. I really want to know just how strong you are. However, I have to kill you today. A sinister laugh rang out from the darkness. It was Song Xian's voice. Soon after, Yuan discovered that the surrounding darkness had begun to squirm. In the end, they turned into shadows. To be more precise, they were Song Xian's shadows. These shadows all held pitch-black swords and charged at Zhuan like black rain. Since you look down on my laws of ice and fire, I'll let you experience the power of these 2 laws. Zhuan spat out these words indifferently. The energies of ice and fire began to surge to the surface of his body. His vigorous body was half blue and half red. His veins emitted a faint light, looking strange yet distinct. Zhuowen's eyes became extremely strange. His right eye was ice blue and filled with a dense chill, while his left eye was fiery red and burning. Boom! The moment he combined the laws of ice and fire, Zhuowen moved. He threw a punch, and the terrifying wind from his punch almost shattered the air. Then the energies of ice and fire soared into the sky, condensing into a huge palace of ice and fire. Bang! The palace of ice and fire came crashing down like a mountain. Immediately, hundreds of thousands of shadows were crushed to the bottom, unable to move at all. Bang! 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 Zhuowen threw punch after punch. The ice and fire energy from each punch condensed into huge palaces of ice and fire in the air. The palaces of ice and fire pressed down, blocking the densely packed black figures in the surroundings. Damn it! A flustered and exasperated voice came from the darkness. It was vague and indistinct. It should be Song Xian's voice. Zhuan narrowed his eyes. 2 different colors alternated in his eyes. It looked extremely strange. He muttered in a low voice, "The laws of darkness are indeed difficult to deal with. The darkness of this darkness boundary is unusual. I can't see through it at all. However, I have mental power. I can use mental power to replace my eyes and sense Song Xian's location." With that, Zhuowen closed his eyes. His mud-pill palace operated at high speed. Mental power surged out like countless tentacles that stretched for hundreds of miles. To Zhuowen's surprise, the darkness boundary created by the laws of darkness didn't hinder the spread of his mental power at all. Where is Song Xian? With his eyes closed, Zhuowen relied entirely on his mental power to sense the surrounding situation and search for Song Xian's figure. Found him. He's right here. Not long after, Zhuowen's senses found a figure. This figure was hidden in an inconspicuous corner on the left side of the darkness boundary. The laws of darkness enveloped this figure, causing him to completely blend into the darkness. Zhuowen didn't make a sound. He slowly approached the corner where Song Xian was. When he was a few dozen meters away, Song Xian suddenly raised his head. There was a trace of surprise in his eyes. What's going on with Zhuowen? He seems to be moving towards me. Did he discover me? Song Xian frowned slightly and muttered in a low voice. However, he didn't believe it. The darkness created by the laws of darkness was difficult to see with the naked eye. He didn't believe that Zhuowen could discover him. However, when Zhuowen was only 10 meters away from him, Song Xian suddenly retreated. This time, he had no choice but to believe it. After all, how could Zhuowen be so certain that he was coming towards him? Kill! At this moment, Zhuowen leaped up with the tiger head clear gold spear in his hand. His entire body turned into an afterimage as he charged towards Song Xian. Darkness crush. Song Xian's expression was a little ugly. He hadn't expected that Zhuowen would actually discover him. He immediately mobilized the laws of darkness. Waves of dark energy came from all directions and pressed toward Zhuowen like countless tentacles. Break! Zhuowen wasn't afraid at all. He swung his spear. The energy of ice and fire turned into countless blades that swept out. Instantly, the countless black tentacles around him were sliced apart. Damn it! Song Xian snorted coldly. He made a grabbing motion with both hands. The laws of darkness gathered in his palms and formed two black swords. Ding ding! He swung the two swords, creating a powerful sword dance that slashed at the spear. The crisp sound of metal clashing rang out. Boom boom boom. Zhuowen naturally wasn't to be outdone. He swung his spear again and again. The energy of ice and fire were like pythons that would sweep out from tricky angles, aiming for Song Xian's vitals. However, Song Xian would always use the laws of darkness to evade the attacks. As a result, Song Xian was completely at a disadvantage between the two of them. The more Song Xian fought, the more shocked he became. How could this young man be so powerful? He was a half-saint who had mastered the laws of darkness. It was unbelievable that he was at an absolute disadvantage. Puchi! Song Xian spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was as pale as snow. His lips and teeth were trembling. He looked at Zhuowen again. Zhuowen was unharmed. Instead, he seemed to be getting stronger as the battle went on. At this moment, Song Xian already had thoughts of retreating. But soon, a ruthless look appeared in his eyes. If I detonate the dark barrier, I might be able to defeat him. Thinking of this, Song Xian immediately blended into the darkness and retreated. Before long, he had retreated to the edge of the barrier. Zhuowen was slightly puzzled, but he still chased after Song Xian. However, Song Xian revealed a trace of a strange smile, and he actually entered the edge of the darkness and instantly vanished. Oh! Song Xian left the dark barrier. Zhuowen arrived at the edge of the barrier and smashed his spear at it. He found that the barrier formed by the laws of darkness was exceptionally sturdy. He couldn't damage it at all. Oh! The surrounding dark energy is starting to go berserk. Zhuowen sensed something and looked around. He found that the darkness around him was wriggling violently. It was like black soil. It was extremely terrifying. Outside the dark barrier, Song Xian's eyes were ferocious. He said coldly, "You should be able to die peacefully under the dark barrier." As he spoke, Song Xian stood in the air and formed seals with his hands. Then, he slammed his right palm on the surface of the dark barrier. Pissed! Pissed! The surface of the dark barrier began to wriggle violently. A wave of violent energy spread out. Rumble! The wriggling of the dark barrier did not last for long. The instant it reached its limit, it exploded with a loud bang. Terrifying explosive energy overflowed in all directions, shooting straight into the sky, causing the sky to darken by a lot. The explosion of dark energy might not be as brilliant as an ordinary explosion, but its power was far beyond that of an ordinary explosion. The surrounding stone forest was turned into ruins by the dark energy. Several hundred miles away, At the top of an inconspicuous stone forest, Zhao Gu crouched down and looked at the scene in shock. Song Xian detonated the dark barrier. Zhuan is most likely dead. This. Zhao Ji's eyes were wide open. Qin Wen couldn't die. He had been poisoned by the infant corrosion goo. If Qin Wen died, he wouldn't be able to live for more than 3 months. He would also be finished. It's over. Qin Wen is dead. I'm also finished, Zhao Gu said dejectedly. The explosion of darkness energy lasted for a cup of tea's time. Then it gradually disappeared. Song Xian, who was floating in the air, looked down with indifferent eyes. He was shocked to find a huge palace of ice and fire standing below. This palace of ice and fire was completely different from the one Zhuan had summoned before. Its surface was covered in 9 colors. Among the 9 colors, there were strands of pitch black. It looked extremely strange. For some reason, this palace of ice and fire gave Song Xian a great sense of danger. It was even more dangerous than any of the palaces that Zhuan had summoned before. Dark barrier? It doesn't seem very powerful. Chapter 1453. Thump. How is this possible? Song Xian's eyes narrowed as he roared. He flipped his hands in a seal, and the law of darkness surged. At the same time, a ray of black light shot out from between his brows. The black light and the law of darkness fused together, erupting with terrifying black light. Then, the black light began to wriggle wildly with the help of the law of darkness. In the end, it formed a strange beast that was several meters long. It was pitch black, like a tiger with dog fur. It was 2 feet long, had a human face, tiger feet, pig teeth, and a tail that was 18 feet long. My armor soul by... After fusing with the law of darkness, it's even stronger than before. If you don't summon your armor soul, you'll die without a doubt. Song Xian calmed down a lot after summoning his armor soul. He looked down at the young man standing in the ice fire palace and said indifferently, I really don't need to summon my armor soul to deal with you. Zhuan said indifferently. He pushed off with his right foot and somersaulted out of the ice fire palace. Then, he swung his spear and smashed it into the side of the palace. Rumble! The ice and fire palace, which was hundreds of meters tall, rose from the ground and shot towards Song Xian. How dare you be so arrogant? Song Xian snorted coldly and waved his right hand. By, and roared and stomped its thick front hooves in the air. It descended from the sky like a vigorous leopard. Rumble! When the Bai and arrived in front of the ice and fire palace, it suddenly swung its front hooves and landed on the ice and fire palace, causing a series of explosions to resound. Terrifying law of darkness erupted from Bai An's body. The law of darkness turned into black lightning that spread around Bai. Then Bai An's strength increased by hundreds and thousands. Bang! With the help of the law of darkness, Bai An punched through the ice fire palace. Then, it turned into a black shadow that shuttled through the palace and destroyed it. In just an instant, the ice fire palace collapsed and disappeared into thin air. Oh, it broke through the ice fire palace? Huan was stunned. He hadn't expected Song Xian's armor soul to be so strong. Even the ice fire palace couldn't withstand it. Arrogant and conceited fellow, you will pay the price later. The corners of Song Xian's mouth curled into a smile, and a trace of pride appeared in his eyes. Clearly, he was quite excited that Tao Wu had destroyed the ice fire palace. At the same time, he felt that the young man in front of him shouldn't have any more trump cards. Upon receiving Song Xian's order, Bai An roared and swooped down toward Zhu. At the same time, Song Xian followed closely behind. The law of darkness condensed a black blade in his hands as he leaped onto Bai An's back. He looked down at Zhuan from above as if he was examining his prey. Zhuan took a deep breath and gathered the power of the void on his right fist. The void laws were much stronger than the ice and fire laws. In fact, they were even more terrifying than Song Xian's darkness laws. Void! With a low shout, Zhuan suddenly punched out. The laws of the void revolved around his right fist, erupting with powerful void force. You're courting death. Song Xian sneered at the sight of Zhuan's gentle punch. by, and clawed down to meet Zhuowen's punch. Rumble. Song Xian's face immediately froze. He felt as if the surrounding void had collapsed the moment Zhuowen's punch arrived. Then, the small part of the void whereby Anne's claw was located began to shatter. By, and cried out miserably as his right claw was crushed along with the shattering void. It's not over yet. Zhuon bent down and punched again. The power of the void laws surged out and landed on Bai Anne's chest. Then, the power of the void spread all over Bai Anne's body. Bai and cried out miserably as the power of the void surrounded him. Cracks appeared on his body, and in the end he shattered like glass. Song Xian was shocked. He stomped his right foot and hurriedly left Bai Anne's body. Looking at the shattered Bai, his whole body trembled. The power of the law again. Other than the laws of ice and fire, you have a third one? What kind of law is that? It's so powerful! Song Xian exclaimed in disbelief. The law of the void. You can die in peace now. Zhuon slowly raised his head and stepped into the void. When he reappeared, he was behind Song Xian. He clenched his fist, and the void around Song Xian froze. Song Xian's body was also frozen, unable to move. I'm the first personal disciple of the Saint Martial sect. You can't kill me. Song Xian roared, both shocked and enraged. The fear of death made him completely abandon his dignity and beg Zhuowen for mercy. It's because you're a personal disciple of the Saint Martial sect that you deserve to die. Zhuon didn't waste any more words. He clenched his right hand, and the power of the void that trapped Song Xian began to compress. Then, inch by inch, Song Xian was crushed into nothingness. What a terrifying guy. Song Xian was killed just like that, and he has mastered 3 kinds of laws. Who is this Qin one? Hundreds of miles away, Zhaogu, who had been watching the battle, gasped when he saw this scene. Just now, when the two of them were fighting, he had clearly seen Zhuowen release the power of the laws of ice, fire, and the void. Anyone who could master 3 kinds of laws was definitely a genius, a peerless genius. When he grew up, he would definitely be a terrifying expert at the level of a mighty hero. After doing all this, Yun seemed very calm. With his current strength, he could crush an ordinary half-saint even without using the power of the saint body. Song Xian's strength definitely surpassed that of an ordinary half-saint, but he was still nothing in front of Zhuowen. After all, the law of the void was extremely terrifying. Combined with the law of ice and the law of fire, he would be invincible among half-saints. Of course, if Zhuon used the 2 special laws of death and desolation, he could definitely kill Song Xian. But that would be a waste of talent. Lord Qin. Zhaogu rushed over and stood respectfully beside Zhuon like an obedient servant. Originally, he thought that Zhuon and Song Xian would both be injured, and then he would sit back and reap the benefits. But now, it seemed that he was completely wrong and very wrong. Qin Wen was like a vast ocean in front of him. He couldn't see through him at all. Even Zhaogu was a little uncertain about his cultivation. Previously, Qin Wen had shown that his cultivation was at the 7th level Emperor realm. Later, it was the 9th level Emperor realm. Now, he was directly at the half-saint realm. Zhaogu was really afraid that this guy was still hiding his strength. Maybe this young man in front of him was a saint. He shouldn't be a saint. If he was, he would have crushed Song Xian and the other 2. He wouldn't have fought for so long. Zhaogu thought to himself. At the same time, he came to a conclusion about Zhuowen's strength. He was infinitely close to a saint, much stronger than most half-saints. Zhaogu, let's go back to Saint Martial City. Zhuon glanced indifferently at Zhaogu, then left the stone forest. Zhaogu naturally didn't dare to object, and followed closely behind. Zhuowen's gaze fell on Saint Martial City, and a playful smile appeared on his face. His next target was Wu Ho's son, Wu Zhantian. In the core area of the Saint Martial sect, a majestic building stood tall. This building was called the Life Tablet Pavilion, and it held the life tablets of the sect's important disciples and higher-ups. When these important people died, their corresponding life tablets would shatter. Crack, crack, crack. At the same time, the sound of 3 glass shattering rang out from the building. What's going on? I think I heard something shattering coming from the attic. The two guards standing at the entrance of the Life Tablet Pavilion looked at each other with surprise in their eyes. Let's go in and take a look, one of the guards suggested, and the other immediately agreed. Thus, the two of them pushed open the door and entered. This is bad. The life tablets of all three of Wu Ho's direct disciples have shattered. We must inform Wu Ho as soon as possible. The two guards sat down on the ground and immediately realized the severity of the situation. They immediately stood up and left the Life Tablet Pavilion. In the central hall of the St. Martial sect, an old man held a walking stick with both hands and looked at the two trembling guards with a dignified gaze. You mean to say that Song Xian, Mu Wendi, and Lin Anyun's life tablets have all shattered? Although the old man's voice was calm, there was a hint of murderous intent in his tone. It was like the calm before the storm. Great Elder, I saw it with my own eyes. I can't be wrong. The two guards kneeled on the ground and hurriedly said, "Crack." The old man suddenly gripped his walking stick. Instantly, the wooden walking stick turned into countless wood shavings and flew everywhere. How dare you? Who is it? How dare you kill three of my St. Martial sect's personal disciples? As he spoke, a terrifying saint aura burst out from the old man's body and spread throughout the entire hall. The two guards who were prostrating on the ground couldn't withstand it and stuck to the ground, unable to get up at all. Great Elder, I'm afraid there's something fishy about this. A faint voice came from the back of the hall, followed by steady footsteps. When the footsteps stopped, a young man who was no more than 30 years old appeared in the old man's line of sight. The young man had thick eyebrows and a high nose. His eyes were as bright as silver stars, and he had a medium build and strong limbs. At first glance, he didn't look like a dazzling figure, but he inadvertently revealed a fierce and powerful aura, giving people the feeling that he was unshakable. Zhan Tian, did you discover something? The old man's eyes flashed, and his tone softened a lot. The young man in front of him was Wu Ho's son, Wu Zhantin. His talent was terrifying, and his strength was abnormal. Although he hadn't entered the saint realm yet, his strength had far surpassed that of an ordinary half-saint, and was infinitely close to that of a profound sage. Even if Wu Zhantian encountered a profound sage powerhouse, he might not be a match for them, but he could still escape if he wanted to. This was an extremely amazing thing. Chapter 1454. Wu Zhantan, I sensed something the moment their life tablets shattered. That's why I went to investigate their whereabouts today, Wu Zhantian said unhurriedly. What did you find? The old man's eyes lit up. Wu Zhantian's gaze was deep as he said, the three of them followed Zhao Gu out of St. Martial City today, and their life tablets shattered one after another. You mean to say that Zhao Gu was the one who killed them? The old man asked in surprise. That's not true. Zhao Ji's strength can't possibly be that strong. I'm afraid that Zhao Gu joined forces with outsiders to lure out Song Xian and the other two before killing them. After all, Zhao Ji's life plate is still intact, Wu Zhantian said indifferently. The old man stood up and said, What a Zhao Gu! He actually dared to collude with others to kill three direct disciples of my St. Martial sect. He's simply courting death. He really deserves to die. If I'm not wrong, it's very likely that the ones who killed them were experts from other secluded realms. There must be saints among them, Wu Zhantian said with killing intent in his eyes. Damn it! How dare they bully our martial dark realm like this? Killing Song Xian and the other two is probably to weaken our sacred martial sect's chances of victory in the 9 Underworld Conference. Damn it! The old man said resentfully. Should we inform the sect master? The old man continued to ask. Wu Zhantian shook his head and said, There's no need for that. Even if it's the other secluded realms, it's impossible for them to send powerful saints. Otherwise, Father would definitely sense it. Moreover, Father is at the critical moment of breaking through to the Sky Sage realm. It's best not to disturb him. The old man nodded in agreement. Although his cultivation was higher than Wu Zhantian's, his status in the sect was equal to Wu Zhantian's. After all, Wu Zhantian was the son of a martial marquis, and extremely talented. Once he broke through to the profound sage realm, his strength would definitely surpass this old man's. The old man was naturally very polite to Wu Zhantian. What we need to do now is to search the entire city for Zhao Gu. Once we find him, we'll be able to find the person behind him. I'll have to trouble you to arrange this, First Elder. Wu Zhantian said as he cupped his hands respectfully towards the old man. His attitude made the old man beam with joy. No problem. Leave the search to me. Once there's a result, I'll inform you. The old man smiled. After another round of discussion, Wu Zhantian left the main hall while the old man continued to search for Zhao Gu. Outside the martial Saint City, Zhuan waved his right hand and stopped Zhao Gu from continuing forward. What's wrong, Lord Qin? Zhao Gu asked curiously. You're wanted, Zhuan said calmly. Zhao Gu was taken aback. Soon after, he followed Zhuan's gaze and landed on the piece of paper pasted at the entrance. There was a portrait drawn on the paper. The portrait belonged to Zhao Gu. Zhao Ji's face turned ugly. He quickly turned around and covered his face so that the guards at the city gate wouldn't see him. Looks like the Saint Martial sect already knows about Song Xian and the other two's deaths. They're already pointing their spear at you, Zhuan said calmly. Lord Qin, what should I do now? Zhao Gu asked anxiously. Leave the martial dark realm. Go as far as you can, Zhuan said calmly. Zhao Gu nodded. Soon after, he said hesitantly, Lord Qin, what about the antidote for my soul-eroding venomous insect? Take it. Zhuan flicked his finger and handed Zhao Gu a simple and unadorned pill. Zhao Gu took the pill and smiled happily. He cupped his hands at Zhuan and hurriedly fled in the opposite direction of the martial Saint City. Now that he was wanted by the Saint Martial sect, how would he dare to enter the martial Saint City and walk right into their trap? The Saint Martial sect's reaction is really fast. Zhuan did not pay any attention to Zhao Gu who had left. Instead, he directly stepped into martial Saint City. Without a doubt, the martial Saint City was currently in a state of panic and was heavily guarded. On the large streets, groups of disciples wearing the Saint Martial sect's uniform were constantly inspecting the surroundings. Zhuan was even questioned a few times. However, Zhuan answered fluently and quickly dismissed the Saint Martial sect's disciples' interrogation. I can't go to the life of luxury anymore. I have to find a new inn to stay in first. Zhuan shook his head as he looked at the surrounding people who were in a state of panic. He quickly left the street and randomly chose an inconspicuous inn, after which he booked a room and checked in. I can't use the name Qinwen anymore. I'm afraid that Zhao Gu won't be able to escape from the martial dark realm. Sitting cross-legged in the dark room, Zhuan muttered softly. The muscles on his face squirmed again. His originally handsome face began to become ordinary and honest. If Zhuan was a valiant young master before, he was now a mountain village youth. When he smiled, he could reveal a row of white and flawless teeth. He looked quite dry. My new name will be He Wen. Time passed by slowly. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. During this month, the martial Saint City could be said to be in a state of panic. The Saint Martial sect had mobilized all their disciples to search for Zhao Gu. As for Zhuan, he would go out every day to gather information. His only goal now was the son of the martial marquis, Wu Zhantian. After killing Wu Zhantian, he planned to return to the Divine Void Realm and wait for the 9 Netherworld Realm to begin. After all, time was limited. Zhuan couldn't take revenge on every Netherworld Realm. It was too much of a waste of time. After completing the revenge plan in the martial Dark Realm, Zhuan planned to take revenge on the remaining Netherworld realms in the 9 Netherworld Conference. I heard that Zhao Gu was captured yesterday and is now being escorted back to the Saint Martial sect. This Zhao Gu is really daring. He actually colluded with outsiders to kill Song Yuan, Mu Wende, and Lin Anyun, the 3 direct disciples of the Saint Martial sect. There must be something wrong with his head. I heard that there's someone behind this Zhao Gu. It's said to be a young man named Qinwen. What's even more unbelievable is that the one who killed the 3 was also Qinwen. This Qinwen is really powerful. Where did he come from? He actually killed 3 direct disciples of the Saint Martial sect by himself. Walking out of the inn, Zhuowen heard the discussions of many cultivators in the restaurant. Among them, Qin Wen's name had spread throughout the martial saint city. He had killed 3 direct disciples of the Saint Martial sect by himself, including the half-step Saint Song Yuan. Moreover, Qin Wen was still young. Therefore, once the news spread, Qin Wen's name spread throughout the martial saint city. All of you shut up. Whoever dares to mention Qin Wen again, I'll tear their mouths apart. Suddenly, an angry snort rang out in the inn. Then, the heated discussions of the crowd quieted down and their gazes fell on the source of the voice. It came from a table near the window. There were 7 figures sitting at the table, 5 men and 2 women. The one who had slammed the table and stood up was a young woman. The woman wore a long green dress. Her lips were thin, revealing a trace of harshness. At this moment, her beautiful eyes were filled with killing intent as she stared unkindly at the people who were discussing around her. It's Wu Zhirong, the daughter of Marquis Wu. I didn't expect her to be in this inn. How unlucky. The cultivators who had been talking loudly just now kept quiet out of fear. They didn't dare to refute or make a sound. This Wu Zhirong's background wasn't small. They didn't dare to be presumptuous. Marquis Wu's daughter? Zhuowen's eyes narrowed dangerously. He retreated to a corner and coldly watched the scene in the inn. What's wrong? Weren't you all talking happily just now? Why are you all silent now? Wu Zhirong said sarcastically. The inn became very quiet. No one spoke. In front of Marquis Wu's daughter, who dared to speak carelessly? Since you all aren't talking, then I'll drag you out and continue. Wu Zhirong sneered. Then she gave a look to the 5 male disciples of the sacred martial sect at the table. The 5 male disciples nodded as they received the order. They rushed out and transformed into 5 shadows. In an instant, they rushed to the few tables where the discussion was the fiercest. But suddenly, screams rang out in the inn. Chapter 1455. Challenge. The cold light was too fast. The 5 disciples didn't even have time to react. 5 arms flew into the sky, blood splattering everywhere. Wu Zhirong's expression changed drastically. Her beautiful eyes flashed coldly as she said, "Who is it? How dare you be so presumptuous?" The Saint Martial sect is the ruler of the martial dark realm. Is everyone so unreasonable? They don't even give us the right to talk? An unhurried voice was slowly transmitted over. Immediately, a tall and straight figure walked over from a corner of the restaurant. Everyone looked over and saw an honest-looking young man slowly walking over with a smile on his face. "For you, how dare you meddle in the business of the Saint Martial sect?" Wu Zhirong's beautiful eyes were filled with hostility. However, she didn't dare to act rashly. This young man was able to cut off the right arm of the 5 disciples in an instant. His strength was far beyond the average high-level martial emperor realm. The others in the restaurant also looked curiously at the ordinary-looking young man in front of them. They whispered to each other, "It's not that I want to meddle in the business of the Saint Martial sect. It's just that you guys have crossed the line." Zhuowen smiled and said indifferently, "Crossed the line? The Saint Martial city was built by the Saint Martial sect. In this place, the Saint Martial sect is above everyone else. In this place, the Saint Martial sect is the sky. Who dares to go against us?" Wu Zhirong raised her head and puffed out her chest. Her beautiful eyes flashed with arrogance. With a colossus like the Saint Martial sect and her status as the daughter of a martial marquis, who dared to disobey her? Many cultivators in the restaurant were in an uproar. However, none of them dared to say anything. After all, Wu Zhirong was the daughter of a martial marquis. Who would dare to offend her? Slap. The clear sound of a slap resounded just as his voice faded. Soon after, the entire restaurant descended into silence. Wu Zhirong was holding her swollen hand as she stared blankly at the young man in front of her. After a short moment of shock, Wu Zhirong suddenly screamed and waved her hand. The silver soft whip was like a silver snake as it swept toward Zhuowen's vitals. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. He grabbed the silver soft whip with his right hand. What? Wu Zhirong was shocked. The silver soft whip was a high-level martial emperor weapon. It was powerful. How could this person grab at martial emperor realm martial emperor with his bare hands? Slap. Zhuowen couldn't be bothered to pay attention to Wu Zhirong, who had sunk into madness. He turned his hand and slapped her again. Another crisp slap resounded. The terrifying strength of the slap almost made Wu Zhirong dizzy. Her mind was somewhat muddled. The restaurant was extremely quiet. Everyone looked at the young man in front of them with strange gazes. This kid was really daring. He was so unbridled in the martial Saint City, slapping the daughter of a martial marquis. Wu Zhirong, bastard, let Miss Wu. The Saint Martial Marquis. Martial Marquis to Wu to Martial Marquis to Martial to God to Marquis Mara Marquis. As for the other girl at the table, she was so scared that she didn't know what to do. She just stood there in a daze, not knowing what to do. For you. What do you want? Wu Zhirong suppressed her voice. She sounded like she was about to cry. She was Marquis's daughter. No one had dared to hit her since she was young. She felt wronged. Although she wanted nothing more than to tear this damnable fellow to shreds, she also knew that it was of no use at all. This kid's strength was too strong. Nothing much? My name is Yun. I'm a wild crane in martial nether realm. I've been in seclusion for dozens of years. I heard that Marquis's son, Wu Zhantian, is the #1 genius in martial nether realm. I don't agree, Zhuowen said. The crowd was in an uproar. Zhuowen's words were obvious. He didn't agree that Wu Zhantian was the #1 genius in martial nether realm. At the same time, he pointed out that he was a hidden martial artist in martial nether realm. Hidden martial artists existed in every martial nether realm. Most of them didn't want to be involved in the conflicts of the mortal world. They wanted to develop their forces in peace. However, being low-key didn't mean that they were weak. They just didn't show it. Thinking of this, many of the surrounding martial artists understood that the reason why this young man was so calm was probably because the hidden force behind him wasn't weak. What do you mean? Do you want to challenge my big brother? Wu Zhirong asked strangely. Why not? Shouldn't the title of the #1 genius be given to the strongest? I'm about the same age as Wu Zhantian, and I'm also quite strong. If I challenge Wu Zhantian and defeat him, the #1 genius title should belong to me, Zhuowen said arrogantly. Many of the surrounding martial artists had strange looks on their faces. Although this young man looked unfathomable, there was still a gap between him and Wu Zhantian. Wu Zhantian was the son of Marquis and the strongest genius in Saint Martial sect. His strength was much more terrifying than Song Xian's. It was said that he was infinitely close to becoming a profound sage. Ordinary profound sages couldn't kill Wu Zhantian. From this, it could be seen how terrifying Wu Zhantian was. To be able to escape from a sage without entering the sage realm, one must have heaven-defying strength. Wu Zhirong was startled. She smiled contemptuously and said, "Are you dreaming? My big brother's strength is comparable to an ordinary profound sage. Who do you think you are? You dare to challenge him? The ignorant are truly fearless." Slap. Zhuowen didn't hold back and slapped Wu Zhirong again. He said indifferently, "Do I need you to tell me who I am? If you don't want to be slapped, I think you'd better think before you speak." The crisp sound of the slap attracted the attention of many people. Especially when they saw Wu Zhirong's bulging face, the corners of their eyes twitched. But even more people were secretly giving her a thumbs up. Wu Zhirong relied on her status as the daughter of Marquis and could be described as unruly and domineering in Saint Martial City. Many people in Saint Martial City couldn't stand this woman. If it weren't for Saint Martial sect, someone would have already come out to slap her. Wu Zhirong didn't dare to speak carelessly anymore. She silently lowered her head, but her beautiful eyes flashed with resentment. Today, she was slapped in front of everyone. To her, it was an indescribable humiliation. Since you approve of your big brother, Wu Zhantian, then let's do it this way. Call him out and compete with him. I want to see if his title as the #1 genius is worthy of it. Zhuowen stood proudly. His eyes emitted an intense light that couldn't be looked at directly. This kid actually wants to challenge Wu Zhantian. His courage is commendable. Although Wu Zhantian hasn't entered the profound sage realm, His strength is exceptionally terrifying. Everyone was shocked. Wu Zhantian's name shook the entire martial nether realm. Few people didn't know him. Furthermore, this kid was indeed from Saint Martial Sect. He was the #1 genius of martial nether realm. It could even be said that Wu Zhantian's fame in the 9 nether realm was similar to Mo Wen in the desolate nether realm. Although the two hadn't fought before, they were often compared. Of course, other than these two, the #1 geniuses of other nether realms were also extremely terrifying. For example, Yang Yi of the divine nether realm gave people the feeling that he was unfathomable. Zhuan didn't care about the discussions around him. Instead, he carried Wu Zhirong out of the restaurant and walked towards Saint Martial Sect in the center of Saint Martial City. There's a good show to watch. Looks like this kid is really going to challenge Wu Zhantian and the entire Saint Martial Sect. Zhuan's action immediately attracted the attention of many martial artists. They all followed behind him. Not good. This Hewen is too daring. He actually dares to look down on our Saint Martial Sect and even carry Miss Wu like this. The 5 male disciples who had their arms cut off had already stopped the bleeding. Seeing Wu Zhirong being carried away, their faces changed and they all followed behind. In the huge square in front of Saint Martial Sect, Yuan carried Wu Zhirong openly and walked to the square unhurriedly. Isn't this the daughter of Marquis Wu Zhirong? Why is she being carried like this? Who is this kid? How dare he be so disrespectful to Marquis Wu's daughter? Is he tired of living? There were many people in the square. When Zhuan arrived, he immediately became the focus of everyone's attention. After all, Yuan was carrying Wu Zhirong, a well-known character. How dare he? How dare he be so disrespectful to Miss Wu? Soon, a group of people wearing Saint Martial Sect's uniform came to the square. The leader was a man in his 30s. He came with an aggressive aura. Especially when he saw Wu Zhirong in Zhuan's hand, he was even more furious. He took a step forward and swung the long spear in his hand. It was like an arrow leaving the bow, aiming for Zhuan's vitals. The man followed closely behind. His emperor's aura of the 8th level martial emperor realm came crashing down. Many people in the square looked at him in awe. Boom! Zhuan threw out a punch and the long spear exploded. Then, without changing the momentum of his punch, he smashed the man's arm. Kacha! The sound of bones cracking was heard. The man screamed in pain. His right hand was distorted and flew out, crashing onto the ground. An 8th level martial emperor realm expert killed in one move. Many martial artists in the square were stunned by this scene. Many of them couldn't even react. My target today is Wu Zhantian. My name is He Wen. I came from the secluded place of the martial nether realm. I just came out of seclusion not long ago. I heard that the #1 genius of the martial nether realm is called Wu Zhantian, and he seems to be quite famous. So, I'm here to see if this Wu Zhantian is worthy of his name. Yuan leaped up and floated above the square. A powerful saint's aura spread out, causing the whole square to stagnate for a moment. What a powerful aura. This kid is also a half-step saint. He's so young, but he's already a half-step saint. No wonder he wants to challenge Wu Zhantian. I didn't expect that the secluded forces could cultivate such a genius. It's really a coincidence. I just don't know how big of a chance this kid has compared to Wu Zhantian. I'm afraid his chance of winning is not high. Wu Zhantian is said to have mastered 3 types of law power. He's a rare genius of the Saint Martial Sect. Wu Ho has poured countless blood to cultivate him. His combat strength is extremely terrifying. This young man can't compare to him. Chapter 1456. Life and Death Determined. What's going on? What happened at the sacred martial square? Suddenly, a majestic voice came from the front of the square. Immediately after, an old man in a long robe with mottled hair and beard walked out of the crowd. The old man's aura was extremely vast, and a saint aura that was even stronger than Zhuowen's spread out. Like a mountain, it rumbled towards Zhuan. Zhuowen's pupils shrank and he coldly snorted, but he was not afraid. The 2 saint auras collided, setting off a terrifying hurricane in the sky above the square. Interesting. To be able to reach the half-step saint realm at such a young age, that's not bad. The old man raised his eyebrows and said with a slightly gloomy face, "But the biggest mistake you've made now is to offend my sacred martial sect and even injure that girl, Zhirong." Speaking up to here, the old man's eyes flashed with killing intent, and the saint aura in his body became even more terrifying. It surged out like countless mountains were pressing down. Boom! Zhuowen punched the air and retreated a few steps. Only then was he able to block the terrifying saint might. A void saint realm saint? Squinting his eyes, Zhuowen looked at the old man in front of him with some surprise. It seemed that although the sacred martial sect was not as powerful as the excellent divine institute, it could not be underestimated. Other than Wu Ho, there was also a saint in the sect. Of course, the old man in front of him was only a void saint realm saint, the first of the 5 profound saints. He had just entered the profound saint realm. If Zhuowen directly used his saint body, this old man might not be his opponent. However, Zhuowen's target this time was Wu Zhantian. Without a doubt, Wu Zhantian's potential was much greater than this old man's. In the future, his cultivation would very likely surpass Wu Ho's. In addition, Wu Zhantian was Wu Ho's son. If he killed Wu Zhantian, Wu Ho would feel the real pain. You actually blocked this old man's saint aura. Not bad. The old man squinted his eyes and said with some surprise. Wu Zhirong flashed to the old man's side and glared at Tuan fiercely. "Great Elder, this brat is too audacious. He doesn't even put our saint martial sect in his eyes. What's more hateful is that this guy even hit me." After entering the square, Zhuowen released Wu Zhirong. Although Zhuowen really wanted to kill Wu Zhirong, this was the headquarters of the saint martial sect, and his target was Wu Zhantian. Naturally, he couldn't escalate the conflict immediately. The old man's gaze was somewhat unfriendly. He stared coldly at Zhuowen and said, "You are from the hidden faction of the martial nether realm? What's your name?" "Congratulations." Zhuowen replied indifferently and continued, "I've always heard of how impressive and powerful that Wu Zhantian is. In the martial nether realm, he is an invincible existence among the younger generation. Today I, Hewen, would like to seek advice from that Wu Zhantian. Of course, if that Wu Zhantian doesn't dare to accept the challenge and wants to be a coward, or if your saint martial sect wants to bully him with numbers, then just pretend that I didn't say anything." As soon as these words came out, the entire square was in an uproar. Everyone stared at the great elder at the end of the square with great interest. Wu Zhantian was extremely famous in the martial nether realm. It was said that when Wu Zhantian was an invincible emperor lord, he had challenged the saint martial sect's sage-to-be and defeated the sage-to-be. At that time, this matter had caused a sensation in the entire martial nether realm. It was also because of this matter that Wu Zhantian was crowned as the #1 genius of the younger generation. Later on, Wu Zhantian had advanced to the sage-to-be. Without a doubt, his strength was much more terrifying than the invincible emperor lord. The current Wu Zhantian's strength was already comparable to the experts of the older generation. How would the younger generation cultivators dare to challenge such an existence? But now, a young genius from a hidden force had suddenly appeared. His cultivation had also reached the sage-to-be realm and his battle strength was also extraordinary. Now that he had declared that he wanted to challenge Wu Zhantian, it naturally attracted the attention of many people in the square. Moreover, due to Zhuowen's insolent performance, the news of him challenging Wu Zhantian had spread throughout the Saint Martial City in a short period of time. Many cultivators in the city heard the news and gathered outside the square. They all wanted to see the true face of this young man who dared to challenge Wu Zhantian. A brat who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. He actually wants to challenge my brother. Grand Elder, just kill this damned fellow, Wu Zhirong said with a sneer. What? Wu Zhantian is a coward and now he wants the elders of the sect to be his shield? Is this the so-called #1 force of the martial nether realm, the Saint Martial sect? Zhuowen was not afraid and said indifferently. Wu Zhirong's pretty face changed slightly and said coldly, "Nothing good comes out of a dog's mouth. My brother is the #1 genius of the Saint Martial sect. He isn't someone that any random person can challenge. Do you have the qualifications? Ha! Look at your swollen cheeks. You say I don't have the qualifications? Zhuo Wen's eyes were filled with ridicule as he pointed at Wu Zhirong's swollen face. Instantly, the gazes of the surrounding cultivators, who had not been paying attention to Wu Zhirong, all gathered over. Soon after, many of them suppressed their laughter as they whispered to each other. Wu Zhirong was so angry that her body trembled and her pretty face flushed red. She knew that Zhuo Wen's actions were definitely intentional. This made her gnash her teeth in hatred. The great elder frowned slightly and his eyes emitted a cold light. However, he could not take action. After all, he was a saint of the Saint Martial sect and this young man was just a junior. If he took action, it would undoubtedly be bullying the weak. Moreover, he disdained to take action against a cultivator who was not a saint. Moreover, the reason that this young man used was not inappropriate. After all, he was only here to challenge Wu Zhantian. Although his method was a little arrogant, the Saint Martial sect would not oppress him just because of this. After all, now that everyone was watching, the great elder naturally could not use underhanded means. Although this young man is also a half-step saint and his aura is quite strong, compared to Zhantian, the gap is not small. Challenging Zhantian is courting death. The great elder's eyes flickered. He was very clear about Wu Zhantian's terrifying strength. If this young man in front of him fought against Wu Zhantian, his chances of winning would not be more than 30%. Thinking of this, the great elder took out a communication jade charm from his spiritual ring and sent a message to Wu Zhantian. He silently put it down and looked down at Zhuo Wen indifferently. Zhantian agrees to your challenge. He will be here soon. What? As soon as the great elder's words came out, the square was in an uproar. All the cultivators were extremely excited and their eyes were filled with excitement. No one expected that Wu Zhantian would actually accept the challenge. Ever since Wu Zhantian's cultivation had broken through to the half-step saint, he had never been challenged again. The most recent time was a few years ago when Wu Zhantian broke through to the invincible emperor realm and took the initiative to challenge a half-step saint elder of the sect. That battle was extremely exciting and caused Wu Zhantian's reputation to soar. And the location of that battle was the sacred martial square. Zhuo Wen silently returned to the center of the square, the corner of his mouth revealing a smile. After a while, on the small path that led to the square inside the sacred martial sect, a tall figure walked step by step. The crisp sound of his footsteps reverberated in everyone's ears. This young man had thick eyebrows and a high nose. His eyes were as bright as silver stars. He had a medium build and his limbs were strong and powerful. At first glance, he did not look like a dazzling figure. However, he inadvertently revealed a fierce and powerful aura, giving people a feeling that he was unshakable like Mount Tai. It's Wu Zhantian. He really came out to accept the challenge. When this young man finally appeared in the square, the surrounding people were in an uproar. Many people even had looks of admiration in their eyes. The battle that year had inspired many young cultivators of the sacred martial sect. Wu Zhantian was less than 30 years old, but his cultivation had already reached the terrifying height of a sage-to-be. Moreover, his combat strength was infinitely close to that of a sage-to-be. In the hearts of many young cultivators, he was a demon-like existence. When Wu Zhantian arrived at the square, his gaze suddenly fell on Zhuo Wen, who was in the center of the square. His sharp eyes were like a falcon's, bursting with a blazing radiance, like a lighthouse on the sea at night. Wu Zhantian's gaze only lingered on Zhuo Wen for 3 breaths of time. Then, he naturally turned around and walked steadily to the first elder's side. "Brother!" Wu Zhirong immediately came to Wu Zhantian's side. Her hands naturally wrapped around Wu Zhantian's right arm, a trace of grievance in her beautiful eyes. "Zhirong, your face?" Wu Zhantian's face was stunned. He stretched out his right hand and gently stroked Wu Zhirong's swollen face. A surge of power of law gushed out, and the latter's swollen face gradually recovered. "Brother, it's all that little bastard's fault. He actually slapped me. Ever since we were young, you and father have never done such a thing." Wu Zhirong complained in an exceptionally wrong tone. "Slapped you?" Wu Zhantian's gaze turned cold. A faint murderous intent suddenly burst out. In an instant, the entire square was filled with an extremely sharp murderous intent. This murderous intent was so cold that it could send chills down one's spine. You've done well. You've slapped my sister. Now, you've come to the entrance of the sacred martial sect to clamor about challenging me. You're very arrogant and very arrogant. Wu Zhantian's gaze once again fell on Zhuowen as he spoke word by word. His voice was filled with a chilling murderous intent. Today, you've come to challenge me. I, Wu Zhantian, accept. However, this battle shall be decided by the heavens. After saying that, Wu Zhantian leaped into the air and landed on the square. The moment Wu Zhantian landed on the ground, the whole square started to shake violently. An invisible ring-shaped airwave, with Wu Zhantian as the center, spread out in all directions. The martial artists nearby all retreated in horror. Life and death battle. Wu Zhantian actually wants to have a life and death battle. The surrounding martial artists were in an uproar. Everyone knew that Wu Zhantian was truly enraged. Usually, a challenge would stop at a certain point. However, a life and death battle was different. Once the battle started, it would be a fight to the death. In a challenge, martial artists rarely used such an extreme method as a life and death battle. However, Wu Zhantian did so. Obviously, he was truly enraged this time. Will he accept this life and death battle? The surrounding martial artists' gazes fell on Zhuo. Even the great elder revealed a smile as he looked at Zhuo. Whether this young man in front of him accepted the life and death battle or not, he would not be able to leave the sacred martial sect alive today. Chapter 1457. Purple Snake Lightning Blade, you're quite brave. The first elder's eyes narrowed as he spoke. The smile on his face grew wider. Since he had accepted the life and death duel, there was no need for him to play any tricks behind his back, as he would die for sure. He really accepted the life and death duel. He is really brave. Once he loses, he'll die. Everyone in the square was stunned. They did not expect he to accept the life and death duel. Wu Zhantian licked his lips and revealed a cruel smile. Looks like you're quite confident in yourself. It's not about confidence, but your defeat is certain, Zhuowen said calmly. Wu Zhantian squinted his eyes and stomped his right foot on the ground. The ground of the square began to crack. He said loudly, "Everyone else, get out of the square. I won't be responsible if you're killed by the shockwaves." As soon as he said that, everyone in the square was stunned and left the square one after another. Since Wu Zhantian had spoken, everyone had no choice but to listen. After all, this was a battle between two half-saints. The shockwaves would be extremely terrifying. If one's cultivation was not high enough, they might die from the shockwaves. In an instant, the huge square became incomparably deserted. Only Zhuowen and Wu Zhantian were left facing each other from afar. At the same time, at the top of the central palace of the sacred martial sect, a tall figure slowly walked out and came to the platform. His sharp eyes pierced through the void and landed on the square. Someone actually dares to challenge Zhantian. How rare. However, this kid's talent is not bad. It's rare to see him reach the half-saint realm at such a young age. If Zhuowen was here, he would definitely recognize that the tall figure was none other than Wu Ho, one of the 6 sages who besieged the Azure Dragon Palace. However, Zhantian won't leave anyone alive. It's a pity for such a genius. Are the two of you ready? If you're ready, we can start now. The first elder stood at the edge of the square. His loud voice echoed throughout the square. Of course we're ready. Wu Zhantian licked his lips. He clenched his hand and took out a purple broadsword from his spiritual ring. The surface of the purple broadsword was surrounded by a dense purple aura. The aura transformed into purple pythons that flickered their tongues. They were lifelike, studio, and there were purple bolts of thunder on the surface of the purple. Purple Snake Thunder Broadsword, Advanced Emperor. After saying that, Wu Zhantian stomped his right foot on the ground and shot out like a bolt of lightning toward Zhuowen. Zhuowen quietly stood up and grabbed the tiger head clear gold spear with his right hand. Wu Zhantian's speed was extremely fast. In an instant, he appeared in front of Zhuowen and slashed out with his violet snake lightning blade. Boom! The purple lightning tore through the air and slashed at Zhuowen. It was like a huge purple snake that coiled around Zhuowen. Zhan as Zhan Studio Tian Zhan Li Studio is Zhan Studio is Tu? Zhan Nin Zhan Clang. The sound of metal clashing resounded. The two weapons clashed together and a terrifying energy burst out. Then, it set off a violent wind. Wu Zhantian turned in the air. The purple snake thunder broadsword's momentum changed. Zhan Tian slashed at Hun Zhantian's abdomen at a tricky and unbelievable angle. If Zhuan Zhantian didn't dodge this slash, he would definitely be killed. The timing of this slash is so accurate. Hewen is going to be in a difficult situation. The slash was stunning. Even an outsider could feel the terrifying power of this slash. If they were in Wu Zhantian's shoes, they wouldn't be able to dodge it. Just when everyone thought that Zhuowen would end up in a sorry state under this attack, a powerful mental energy burst out from the center of his brows. 4-kill sword formation. Slaughter, slaughter, exterminate, and exterminate flew out from Zhuowen's spirit ring. A powerful killing force gushed out from the formation. At the same time, blood-red longswords appeared on the surface of the formation, blocking in front of Zhun. Ding! The thunder snake lightning blade struck the defense formed by the blood sword, and an ear-piercing explosion sounded. Spiritual power? No, that's not right. It's immortal energy that's of a higher level than mental energy. So you're an arcana master. Wu Zhantian's eyes widened as he muttered in a low voice. Kill! Zhuan did not pay attention to Wu Zhantian's words. With a twist of his right hand, the tiger head clear golden spear started to spin at a high speed. The long spear was like an electric drill, piercing towards Wu Zhantian's chest. At the same time, the 4-kill sword formation formed a powerful killing force that enveloped Wu Zhantian like a devouring dragon. Thunder! Wu Zhantian was extremely calm. Terrifying thunder surged out and surrounded his body. The terrifying thunder law gathered in the purple snake lightning blade, and Wu Zhantian slashed out. Rumble! Instantly, countless purple snakes of lightning shot out from the lightning blade and spread out in all directions. They actually blocked the 4-kill sword formation and Zhuowen's lethal spear attack in one go. Break for me! Wu Padian shouted as he threw out the purple snake lightning blade. Under the support of the thunder law, the power of the purple snake lightning blade increased to a terrifying level. Bang! The 4-kill sword formation was actually forced back by the purple snake lightning saber. The long swords contained in the formation diagram all dimmed. Clearly, they had suffered quite a bit of damage from this saber. Interesting. Zhuan grinned and opened his fire eye. The fire law swept out, and his right hand touched the surface of the long spear. Suddenly, the surface of the long spear was ignited with a strong flame. Ding! The fire spear and the lightning blade collided with each other. Thunder and sparks splashed out, forming a dazzling brilliance like fireworks. The two separated as soon as they collided. Immediately, Tuan and Wu Zhantian retreated dozens of steps at the same time, standing on opposite sides of the square. This exchange of blows is actually neck and neck. This Hewen is not simple. Moreover, this Hewen seems to have displayed a strong mind power just now. This guy is also an arcanist, and his mind power cultivation is not low. The moment the two separated, the onlookers outside the square were in an uproar. No one expected that this Hewen, who came out of nowhere, could actually fight with the #1 genius of the sacred martial sect and not be at a disadvantage. This guy's strength is not bad. Wu Zhirong frowned. Seeing that Wu Zhantian could not crush Hewen, she was secretly unhappy. After all, this Hewen is a sage-to-be who has mastered the power of law. Moreover, he is not an ordinary sage-to-be. It will not be easy for Zhantian to deal with him. But it should be soon. With Zhantian's character, I am afraid that he will not tolerate this kind of thing. He will soon use his full strength and completely crush Hewen. The Great Elder was neither sad nor happy. Just now, Wu Zhantian was just showing off his strength. If he had used his full strength, this Hewen would have been crushed to death. Not bad, not bad. Your strength is not bad. You look a few years younger than me, but you can fight with me to this extent. Saying this, Wu Zhantian licked his lips. His eyes were bursting with fighting spirit. He continued, I have not felt this excited for a long time. In order to respect you, I will use my full strength. You will die a worthy death. Saying this, Wu Zhantian suddenly stabbed the purple snake lightning blade into the ground. A strong power of law gushed out from his body. This power of law was very strange. It was dark red in color, and a destructive force faintly spread out from this power of law. The law of destruction. Sure enough, this Wu Zhantian didn't comprehend the power of law. When he was an invincible sovereign lord, he comprehended the law of lightning. This law of destruction should have been comprehended after entering the sage to be. The moment this destructive aura burst out from Wu Zhantian's body, the pupils of the people around the square shrank. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. For an ordinary warrior, comprehending a single law was already an extremely difficult thing. Comprehending two laws was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Those who could comprehend two laws were absolutely monstrous geniuses. There was no doubt that Wu Zhantian was such a terrifying genius. Being able to comprehend two laws, once he entered the sage to be, his strength would become extremely terrifying. Long Xiaotian was a living example. He, who had just entered the profound sage realm, had comprehended two laws of wind and darkness, and his fighting strength was comparable to Elder Raiwa. One must know that the latter was in existence at the peak of the profound sage realm. If Wu Zhantian was able to advance to the sage to be, his fighting strength would definitely be extremely abnormal. This was also the reason why Wu Ho attached so much importance to Wu Zhantian. Destruction and lightning are innately complementary to each other. When the two are combined, the power that is formed is beyond imagination. Wu Zhantian smiled coldly. The destructive power that was gushing out slowly approached the lightning and finally fused together. The originally blue lightning began to turn dark red. In the end, it turned into a dark red lightning. This dark red lightning contained an extremely rich aura of destruction, as if this lightning could destroy the entire world. What a terrifying lightning! This Wu Zhantian is really terrifying. He actually combined the laws of destruction and lightning together. The power that is formed is really terrifying. Everyone's heart was trembling. Under the influence of the dark red lightning's destructive aura, their legs couldn't help but tremble. Big Brother has finally revealed the law of destruction. No matter how powerful this Hewen is, I'm afraid that he will die under Big Brother's move. The corners of Wu Zhirong's mouth curved into a smile. She really wanted to see the fear on Hewen's face before he died. However, when her gaze fell on Hewen, she was surprised to find that the latter's eyes were calm and emotionless. Is he putting on an act? Wu Zhirong didn't know why, but when she saw Hewen's expression, an ominous feeling arose in her heart. The laws of destruction and lightning complement each other and can actually create such a terrifying power. I wonder, compared to the laws of ice and fire, which one is more powerful? Zhuan muttered in a low voice. He suddenly opened the ice eye, and the law of ice surged out and began to combine with the law of fire on the surface of his body. Is that the law of ice? This Hewen also has the power of a second law. Chapter 1458. Saint Physique revealed the great elder's pupils shrank as he stared at Chun. However, he quickly regained his senses and muttered, "This Hewen isn't simple. However, the laws of ice and fire aren't that powerful. They should be slightly inferior to Zhantian's laws of destruction and lightning." The crowd around the square was dumbfounded. Wu Zhantian possessing a second law was already shocking enough. Now, Hewen had also displayed a second law. This was too shocking. Soon, the crowd became excited. They originally thought that this would be a one-sided battle. However, it seemed that it was difficult to determine who would win and who would lose. The laws of ice and fire? Interesting, I want to see just how powerful these two types of laws of yours are. The battle intent in Wu Zhantian's eyes burned even more fiercely. He took a step forward and his entire body was filled with destructive lightning. 9 layers blade of destruction. Combining the laws of destruction and lightning, Wu Zhantian's speed was so fast that it was dazzling. The crowd couldn't even see his figure clearly. First slash. In an instant, Wu Zhantian had already arrived in front of Jun. The surface of the purple snake lightning blade was filled with dark red lightning. The moment the blade was swung, the entire square began to tremble. The power of the destructive lightning is extremely terrifying. If there is no protective shield, I'm afraid that the people outside the square will be affected. At that time, there may be a lot of casualties. The great elder narrowed his eyes and suddenly looked up into the sky. He formed a seal with both hands and suddenly, a sealing power gushed out. Then his right palm landed on the square. A transparent light shield suddenly appeared around the square. It was sparkling and there were ripples from time to time. Boom! The moment the light shield appeared, Wu Zhantian had already swung his first slash. Then, terrifying dark red lightning bolts burst out from Wu Zhantian and filled the entire square. These dark red lightning bolts bombarded the surface of the light shield, causing the latter to tremble violently. Countless ripples spread across the surface of the light shield. It looked extremely terrifying. Those martial artists who were standing outside the square to watch the battle were suddenly frightened by this terrifying dark red electric thread, their faces incomparably pale. If the great elder had not arranged this light shield in advance, the cultivators who were close to the square would have been affected by the dark red electric arcs. The consequences would have been unimaginable. Zhuowen's expression also turned solemn. The power of ice and fire laws condensed on his fist, and then he suddenly punched out. Suddenly, 2 extreme energies soared into the sky, converging into a palace of ice and fire, and smashed towards Wu Zhantian. Rumble! The dark red lightning collided with the ice and fire palace, emitting a terrifying energy. The ground of the square was almost completely shattered, revealing the pitch-black soil underneath. Boom! Boom! Even though Wu Zhantian's attack did not hit its target, his saber did not stop as he continued to hack at Zhuan. Furthermore, each strike was more terrifying than the previous one. The entire square within the light barrier was filled with dense dark red lightning. It looked extremely strange. Even the light shield on the surface of the square was trembling violently, faintly showing signs of shattering. Many martial artists outside the square retreated far away, not daring to get close to the square, fearing that the light shield would shatter and they would suffer an unexpected calamity. The 8th strike. An indifferent voice rang out from the countless electric arcs. Immediately, the countless dark red electric arcs began to converge, forming a huge dark red electric saber that was dozens of feet long. As soon as the dark red electric saber was formed, it slashed towards Jun. Immediately, the ice and fire palace, which was in a deadlock with Wu Zhantian, was smashed into smithereens by the saber. The power of the 2 laws of ice and fire is only SOSO. Wu Zhantian stood above the countless dark red electric arcs, looking down at Jun. He knew that this saber strike would definitely severely injure this lad. 9 flames karmic fire, dark cold poison, come out and combine to form the real ice and fire palace. Zhuowen's indifferent voice slowly rang out from below. Then, the 9 flames karmic fire and dark cold poison gushed out, merging into the ice and fire laws, combining to form an even larger ice and fire palace. Boom! The palace and the electric saber came into contact, and the entire space froze. Then, a terrifying explosion set off. The light shield around the square collapsed into nothingness under the energy of the explosion. What a terrifying energy! Quickly leave this place. The surrounding martial artists' faces changed, and they quickly retreated away from the square. The first elder waved his right hand, and a surge of saint energy formed a defense in front of him, standing firm. Wu Zhirong stood behind the first elder, her beautiful eyes filled with surprise. She did not expect that Hewen could fight with Wu Zhantian to such an extent. Hewen, I will remember your name. You can actually force me to such an extent. But this is the end. You can't take the 9th strike. Just after the explosion, Wu Zhantian's impassioned voice rang out from the sky. Everyone raised their heads, and they were shocked to find that Wu Zhantian had leaped up 100 miles into the sky, holding the violet snake thunder saber, and dark red lightning twined around his body, like a god descending to the mortal world. The ninth strike. Ever since Zhantian started practicing the 9 blades of destruction, he has never used the ninth strike. The power of the ninth strike is so great that even Zhantian can't control it. It's his ultimate move. This Hewen is doomed. The first elder squinted his eyes, revealing a dignified look. Although the ninth strike was Wu Zhantian's strongest move, the price was not small. Generally, Wu Zhantian would not use it unless he had no other choice. But now he had used it. Obviously, Hewen gave him a lot of pressure, and he had no choice but to use this ultimate move. The ninth strike? This Hewen is interesting, but it's the end. At the top of the central palace, Wu Ho leaned against a stone pillar, his hands crossed in front of his chest as he muttered. Like the first elder, Wu Ho was extremely confident in Wu Zhantian's ninth strike. It was impossible for Hewen to take it. The ninth strike, 9-9 returned to 1. Wu Zhantian's eyes were extremely serious as he slowly waved the violet snake thunder saber. It seemed slow, but it was actually fast, and he actually practiced the first 8 strikes. These 8 strikes were extremely terrifying, and they formed 8 huge dark red lightning sabers around Wu Zhantian's body. The moment Wu Zhantian waved the ninth strike, the 8 sabers issued a clear and melodious sound, and then began to fuse together to form a huge dark red saber, with countless destructive lightning raging on the surface of the huge saber. What a terrifying pressure! How can the aura of the ninth strike be so terrifying? Many warriors in the square were shocked. This strike was too amazing, and the pressure it faintly revealed was far beyond the attack of any half-step sage. I'm afraid that this strike has reached the power of a profound sage, right? Many people's hearts trembled. How heaven-defying was it to be able to display the power of a profound sage before entering the sage realm? There was no doubt that Wu Zhantian's ninth strike was enough to kill any warrior below the sage realm. The person who will kill you is called Wu Zhantian. Remember it well. Wu Zhantian stepped on the giant blade and looked down at Zhuowen from above. His gaze was as though he was looking at an ant. After you remember my name, you can go with peace of mind. After saying that, Wu Zhantian's eyes erupted with terrifying killing intent. He stamped on the huge saber, and the huge saber fell from the sky like a heavy mountain. What was even more terrifying was that this huge saber, which was composed of countless dark red lightning, cut through the void. Wherever it passed, the space collapsed inch by inch, like broken glass. It looked extremely terrifying. Zhuowen stood quietly on the platform, looking at the terrifying ninth strike. His eyes were still as calm as an ancient well, as if nothing could make him reveal any other emotions. This strike is really good, but in front of a sage body, it may not be much. Zhuowen murmured in a low voice. His whole body was faintly flickering with golden light, which spread throughout his body like meridians. Originally, Zhuowen could still use the power of other laws to defend against Wu Zhantian's ninth strike. However, the remaining 3 laws were his trump cards. In other words, he was prepared to use them during the 9 Underworld Assembly. If he used them too early, it would be exposed during the 9 Underworld Assembly. However, the sage body was not easy to see. After all, if he wanted to hide it, no one would know that he had a sage body. Moreover, there was no such thing as a sage body in the outside world. This cultivation system was created by the first mountain god of the Azure Dragon Palace. Boom! Without any fancy moves, Yun faced the terrifying huge saber with a simple punch. However, the surface of this punch was covered with dense golden veins, as if it was made of steel. This guy, is he courting death? Zhuowen's action immediately attracted everyone's attention. Originally, everyone thought that Zhuowen would use an extremely powerful trump card to defend against Wu Zhantian's ninth strike. Who would have thought that this guy would only use a single punch? Although some people with keen senses could sense that Zhuowen's punch was unusual, they did not take it to heart. How could such a simple punch be compared to Wu Zhantian's ninth strike? The two were not comparable at all. Looks like you have nothing left to lose. Wu Zhantian sneered. Boom. However, the next scene caused everyone to collectively fall into a daze. Zhuowen's punch landed on the surface of the huge saber. Then, the huge saber that was so terrifying that it made everyone suffocate first stopped. Then, countless cracks appeared on the surface of the saber and it finally shattered into dust. Psst. Am I seeing things? Such a terrifying ninth strike was shattered just like that. Moreover, it was shattered by a fist? In the crowd, one of them muttered to himself. Although his voice was very soft, in this silent environment, his voice seemed to be infinitely amplified, exploding in everyone's ears. While everyone was in a state of shock, Wu Zhantian was also in a daze. At this moment, Zhuowen's legs bounced as he leaped up and arrived in front of Wu Zhantian in an instant. Then he threw out a punch. Damn it! Wu Zhantian's pupils shrank as he placed the purple snake lightning saber in front of him. Crack! Chapter 1459. The Fall of a Sage Boom. This punch was powerful and heavy. The power of the sacred body was all gathered in this punch. Wu Zhantian groaned as his body bent over like a cooked prawn. Blood spurted out like a faucet that wasn't turned on properly. Following which, his body started to crumble like porcelain, with cracks all over its surface. Pucci. Zhuowen took a few steps back and stared indifferently at Wu Zhantian, whose eyes were wide open. Wu Zhantian kept coughing up blood, and the law of destruction and the law of lightning revolved around him, as if resisting some powerful force. Wu Zhantian's face was hideous, and his eyes were filled with pain. Finally, under countless shocked gazes, Wu Zhantian shattered into pieces. Wu Zhantian is dead? The square became even quieter than before, and this silence was extremely strange. No one spoke, and their actions were strangely consistent, with their mouths wide open, as if they were in a daze. No, big brother. Wu Zhirong's pretty face was as pale as snow, and she took a few steps back. Her beautiful eyes were filled with fear, doubt, and disbelief. You bastard! How dare you kill Zhantian? An oppressive beast-like roar exploded in the air. The great elder's eyes were red, and he rushed over like a madman. Saint force surrounded his body, and he looked like a god or a demon. Zhantian! The moment the great clan elder rushed over, Wu Ho, who had been watching from afar, had his face completely stiffen. From red to green, from green to purple, he finally let out a hoarse and angry roar. That's the patriarch of the sacred martial sect, Wu Ho. Oh my god, this Hewan is in big trouble. He actually killed Wu Zhantian. This is a battle of life and death. Life and death should be left to fate. The sacred martial sect is obviously ignoring the rules. Keep your voice down. This is the territory of the sacred martial sect, and Wu Zhantian is the most powerful genius of the sacred martial sect. Do you really think the sacred martial sect will let him die like this? You're too naive. The moment they saw Wu Ho's figure, many martial artists in the square retreated a few hundred meters. The power of a sage was much more terrifying than a half-sage. Naturally, they did not dare to get close. Of course, many people looked at Hewan with pity in their eyes. Hewan's strength was indeed out of everyone's expectations, but no matter how strong he was not a saint after all. He was probably not a match for the great clan elder and Wu Ho. That Wu Ho is quite far away from here. I'm afraid he'll need around 10 breaths to reach here. If I can make use of this time to get rid of the great elder of the sacred martial sect, then use the law of the void to escape, it should be enough. The moment the great elder and Wu Ho arrived, Zhuowen's mind was spinning rapidly. As for those sacred martial sect disciples that were sent by the great elder to surround them, they were directly ignored by Jun. Even if Jun didn't use the power of the holy body, he could still be regarded as an invincible existence among the half-saints. So he wouldn't put this man in his eyes if he used the holy body. Kill this great elder. Thinking of this, Yun was extremely decisive. He took a step forward and did something that no one expected. Not only did Zhuowen not run, But he also rushed towards the great elder who was rushing over aggressively. It seemed that he intended to confront the great elder head-on. Does this Hewen think that after killing Wu Zhantian, he has the strength to fight against a profound sage? Although the great elder of the sacred martial sect is only a void profound sage, he isn't someone that he can deal with. The surrounding people revealed strange expressions. Some even thought that Zhuan was crazy. Even the great elder revealed a stunned expression. But soon, this stunned expression was replaced by a sinister and cold expression. A guy who hadn't entered the profound sage realm dared to face him directly. He simply didn't know how to write the word death. Don't kill him. Wait for me to come over. Wu Ho's loud voice sounded. The great elder nodded slightly and grinned. Sect master, don't worry. This old man won't kill this man. But if this man loses an arm or a leg, I don't think sect master will mind too much, right? As long as you don't kill him, the rest is up to you, Wu Ho said indifferently. The great elder revealed an even more brilliant smile and softly responded. Then, like a great rock spreading its wings, he instantly descended in front of Jun. The law that the great elder grasped was only the law of gold, one of the 5 elemental laws. A golden light spread around his body, then turned into dozens of golden swords in front of him. Each golden sword was surrounded by a lifelike golden dragon, and they had a majestic aura that could swallow the heavens, the earth, the sun, and the moon. Golden swords swallow the sun and the moon. With a sneer, the great elder pinched his sword fingers, and the dozens of golden swords rushed out and rushed toward Jun. However, it was obvious that the great elder didn't intend to kill Zhuan. The direction of the golden swords wasn't aimed at Zhuan's vital parts, but at his limbs and other unimportant parts. Looking at the great elder's actions, Zhuan sneered in his heart. Suddenly, a golden light burst out from his body, and strands of golden veins spread all over his body. At that moment, Zhuan's body seemed to contain a huge blazing sun, and the vast aura caused the great elder's face to change drastically. Zhuan no longer held back, and fully unleashed the power of the divine body, like a god or a demon. Rumble! Zhuan suddenly threw out a punch, and the golden light exploded, smashing onto the surface of the dozens of golden swords around him. Kacha! Unbelievably, the golden swords formed by the great elder's law of gold couldn't withstand a single blow, and they all shattered into countless pieces. How is this possible? The great elder's pupils shrank into needles, and he couldn't help but scream. Swoosh! Zhuan's momentum didn't decrease, and he stepped into the air and rushed over. Then he threw out another punch, and his target was the great elder's heart. Damn it! This guy clearly doesn't have any saint power aura on him, so how could he shatter my golden swords that were infused with saint power? The great elder's face was gloomy, and he felt the golden fist coming at him again. He flipped his hands, and suddenly, the golden light burst out, forming a huge pyramid in front of Jun. Zhuan's eyes were cold, and he suddenly punched the pyramid. Suddenly, a huge force spread out, and the pyramid collapsed. Dragon subduing fist. The moment the pyramid collapsed, Zhuan's fist changed. With the help of the powerful physical strength of the divine body, he drew a dragon-shaped trajectory in the void. This fist was inherited from Lawrence, and it could subdue a dragon. Its power was vast, and the sun and moon paled in comparison. Rumble! With this punch, tens of thousands of dragons floated, and countless dragon shadows knelt down. A suffocating aura surged out from this punch, and everyone in the square was suppressed to the point that they couldn't breathe. No! The great elder's face turned red, and he roared. This punch gave him too much pressure, and it wasn't a punch that a martial artist who hadn't become a saint could unleash. Rumble! The punch landed in front of the great elder, and suddenly, countless dragon shadows poured into the great elder's body like rivers flowing into the sea. The great elder spat out a mouthful of blood, and the saint energy in his body was in chaos. His blood boiled, and he retreated. This scene caused everyone to gasp. The first elder was a saint, and yet he was injured. Moreover, he was injured by a junior who had yet to enter the saint realm. It was unbelievable. Wu Ho, who was rushing over, stopped in his tracks when he saw this scene. Then he sped up, and the murderous intent in his eyes became more intense. To be able to injure a saint, this kid must die, and he must be eliminated. Otherwise, there would be endless trouble. Wu Ho has sped up, and I'm afraid he'll reach here in 3 breaths. Zhuowen's eyes were as sharp as a sword, and the power of the divine body was unleashed to the extreme. The dragon's subduing fist punched out, and layer after layer, it landed on the Great Elder's body. Rumble! Under the attack of the punches, the Great Elder's body almost collapsed. Blood stained his clothes, and he looked extremely tragic. There's still 1 breath of time. Jun muttered in his heart, and the last punch landed on the Great Elder's chest. The terrifying power of the punch exploded, and immediately, the sound of glass shattering could be heard. If one could look inside, they would be able to see that the Great Elder's heart, under this attack, had shattered into pieces and turned into dust. At the same time, Yun punched out again, and landed on the Great Elder's dantian. The terrifying power corroded in, but what made Zhuowen frown was that the structure of a saint's dantian was extremely tough, and the punch was unable to completely destroy it. Little bastard, I'll definitely kill you. Wu Ho's eyes were wide open. He had a panoramic view of the Great Elder's miserable state, and the anger in his heart erupted like a volcano. Zhuowen's face changed, and with a flick of his right hand, he threw the Great Elder in the direction that Wu Ho had come from. Wu Ho grabbed the Great Elder with his right hand, and at the same time, he poured his saint energy into the Great Elder's body to check the latter's condition. His eyes were burning with rage. The Great Elder's heart was shattered, and his dantian was a little messed up by Zhuowen's saint energy. The nascent soul contained within was slightly damaged. Without a doubt, the Great Elder was almost crippled. If he wanted to recover, he would need to pay a huge price, and the Saint Martial sect might not be able to afford it. I'll kill you. Wu Ho was almost crazy. When he first learned that his 3 personal disciples had been killed, he was already vaguely angry, but he did not act out. After all, he knew that the main force of the 9 Underworld Conference was Wu Zhantian. However, his personal disciples were all personally trained by him, and they could play a huge role in the 9 Underworld Conference. But Wu Zhantian's death had really infuriated him, and he even had the thought of killing Zhuon. The Great Elder was the only saint in the Saint Martial sect other than himself, and he was highly regarded by him. Now that he was seriously injured, Wu Ho almost lost his mind. Zhuon narrowed his eyes and took a step forward. The law of the void lingered around him, and he directly entered the void, disappearing from the square. Boom! Chapter 1460. Entity exposed, he disappeared. Everyone in the square was astonished. Clearly, no one had expected he to suddenly disappear, and disappear so completely. This is the Void Law? This guy also knows the Void Law? Wu Ho's eyes flashed. He remembered that the Void Law came from Excellent Gods Institute. Yuan Ji had mastered the Void Law and was known as the fastest person in the 9 Netherworld realm. There was also Zhuon, whom he had joined forces with the other saints of the Nether realm to hunt down. He seemed to have also comprehended the Void Law. After all, the Void Law was extremely special and difficult to comprehend. There were only a few people who had mastered it. This guy came to our Saint Martial sect to challenge us for no reason. He killed Zhan Tian and injured the Great Elder. This guy, Wu Ho frowned slightly as if he had thought of something. He said angrily, "Bastard, you're Zhun, right? You're still alive." Wu Ho could not think of anyone else besides Zhuon who had mastered the Void Law and had taken the initiative to challenge the Saint Martial sect. Zhuon? Could it be that Zhuon who has a celestial saint artifact? Wu Ho's voice was very loud. Everyone in the square and even the entire Saint Martial city heard him clearly. Soon after, discussions broke out. The Battle of 9 Netherworld Heaven a few years ago had attracted the attention of countless cultivators in the 9 Netherworld realm. Zhuowen's name had also resounded throughout the 9 Netherworld realm at that moment. Possessing a celestial saint artifact, he had fought against 6 saints. This was an earth-shattering achievement. Although Zhuon had been beaten back then, he had escaped from the 6 saints in the end. This was something to be proud of. The reason why Zhuan's name was so resounding was mainly because of his celestial saint artifact. During that period of time, there had even been a frenzy to find Jun. However, as time passed, there were pitifully few clues about Jun. In the end, many cultivators left the matter unsettled. Now that Wu Ho had suddenly shouted out Zhuan's name, it naturally caused an uproar among the cultivators in the square. Is that he Wen Zhuan? It's possible. After all, Wu Ho was one of the 6 great saints who participated in the joint attack on Zhuan. He should have recognized Zhuan's identity. This he Wen has the word Wen in his name. Could it be that Qin Wen, who was rumored to have killed the 3 pro-disciples of the Saint Martial sect, was also Zhuan in disguise? It's very likely. After all, Qin Wen and he Wen appeared out of nowhere. I've never heard of them before. It's very likely that they're Zhuan in disguise. The surrounding people discussed animatedly, while Wu Ho's eyelids twitched. The raging flames in his heart had nowhere to vent, and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. 3 of his personal disciples and Wu Zhantian were killed. His right-hand man, the Grand Elder, was severely injured and on the verge of death. This time, the Saint Martial sect had suffered a great loss. Don't let me see you again. Otherwise, I'll tear you into pieces and make you die a horrible death. Wu Ho roared furiously. Immediately after, he led the Grand Elder and ordered the sect disciples to clean up Wu Zhantian's corpse, and hurriedly entered the sect. Wen had mastered the law of the void. Even if Wu Ho was stronger than Zhuan, in terms of escaping, he was still inferior to Zhuan. Therefore, Wu Ho suppressed the anger in his heart, and prepared to suppress the Grand Elder's injuries first. Above the Saint Martial city, in the pitch-black void, Zhuan stood quietly, looking down at the Saint Martial sect with an evil smile on his face. What Wu Ho had said just now, he had naturally heard it clearly. Looks like I've been recognized. When the time comes, I can't reveal the law of the void in the 9 Nether Conference. Also, there are many people who recognize the tiger head clear golden spear. When the time comes, I'll enter the Azure Dragon Hall and choose another high-grade Emperor weapon. Zhuan murmured in a low voice. With a leap, he drilled into the depths of the void and disappeared in an instant. The storm in the Saint Martial sect also spread in the 9 Nether realm in a short period of time. Zhuan's name once again resounded in the 9 Nether realm. In the Blue Dragon Hall of the Dragon Nether realm, Sapphire Shore suddenly stood up and said with a cold gaze, "After more than a year, Yuan has finally come out. Moreover, his strength has become so strong? I'm afraid it's all thanks to the Immortal Saint artifact. Otherwise, it's impossible for him to advance so quickly." Elder Raiwa said with a frown. "It's very possible. I really don't know what ability Zhuan has to be able to obtain such an Immortal Saint artifact. A brat who hasn't even entered the Saint realm doesn't have the qualifications to possess such a treasure." Sapphire Shore's eyes shone brightly, and his voice contained a hint of passion. The entire Blue Dragon Hall didn't have an Immortal Saint artifact. Even the more powerful Burning Heaven sect didn't have such an Immortal Saint artifact. Only the mysterious forces in the Central Plains could possibly have such an Immortal Saint artifact. Coupled with the news of Zhuan causing havoc in the Saint Martial sect, as long as one wasn't a fool, they would naturally attribute Zhuan's rapid advancement to the Immortal Saint artifact. Sapphire Shore couldn't help but yearn for the Immortal Saint artifact even more. Elder Raiwa's eyes flickered, and he said, "However, Yuan is very cunning. Moreover, he has mastered the void law. It'll be difficult to catch him." Sapphire Shore nodded and said in a deep voice, "I'll send people to continue searching for clues about that little bastard Jun. However, we should prepare for the 9 Netherworld Conference. There's only half a year left." It's said that the profound Saint Master sent by the Primal Chaos Temple in the Central Plains has returned. I wonder why he returned to the Central Plains last time? Elder Raiwa suddenly asked. More than a year ago, the profound Saint Master sent by the Primal Chaos Temple had suddenly left the Eastern Plains in a hurry. The 6 saints had joined forces to attack Zhuan after that profound Saint Master had left. This was also the main reason why the profound Saint Master hadn't appeared when the Immortal Saint artifact had appeared. If the profound Saint Master from the Primal Chaos Temple had interfered, the 6 saints wouldn't have dared to act recklessly. Even if he was only a profound Saint Master, he still had the support of the Primal Chaos Temple. No one would have dared to act recklessly. To be able to travel back and forth from the Central Plains to the Eastern Plains in a little more than a year, as expected of a super force in the Central Plains. Elder Raiwa couldn't help but sigh. The Primal Chaos Temple has powerful existences at the immortal Saint Master level. Such existences can easily construct long-distance temporary space transmission arrays, which can greatly reduce the time it takes to travel from the Central Plains to the Eastern Plains. I think that profound Saint Master must have relied on that temporary space transmission array to travel back and forth to the Eastern Plains in a little more than a year, Sapphire Shore said in a low voice. The Central Plains was very different from the Eastern Plains, the southern barbarian lands, the northern plains, and the western regions. It was located at the core of the continent, and it was extremely far away. Moreover, there were many dangerous environments around the Central Plains. If one wasn't careful, even a saint could fall. What was even more strange was that there was a section of the road to the Central Plains that was a no-fly zone. Even a saint would find it difficult to fly in that area. This also made it very difficult to reach the Central Plains on one's own. Only long-distance space transmission arrays were the most convenient. Of course, heavenly saints like Sapphire Shore and Zhou Tianzong could also fly over if they paid a huge price. However, the two of them were already standing at the peak of their respective regions. If they went to the Central Plains, they would probably become mediocre existences. As the saying goes, it's better to be the head of a chicken than the tail of a chicken. The two of them paid a huge price to go to the Central Plains, and they didn't want to become mediocre. Moreover, they each had a huge force that they needed to manage. They couldn't possibly abandon their forces and go to the Central Plains. Of course, even if they couldn't go, they could still let the disciples of their sects go. If the disciples of their sects were successful in the Central Plains, it would naturally be a joyous occasion when they returned to their sections. Therefore, the Eastern Plains had a grand event like the 9 Underworlds Assembly. This grand event was to select the true genius disciples, activate the ancient space transmission array, and teleport them all to the Central Plains. As for what would happen to them after that, it would naturally depend on their own luck. I wonder who the profound Saint Master brought back to the Central Plains. Could it have something to do with the 9 Underworlds Assembly? Elder Raiwa frowned. Perhaps it has something to do with it. Sapphire Shore's eyes flickered as he casually replied. However, he was very clear in his heart that the person that the profound Saint Master brought back was most likely for the Sky Insect Avatar. Could it be that the Primal Chaos Temple has discovered some clues? Sapphire Shore secretly thought. Let's not talk about this anymore. Speaking of which, we have to thank Hall Master Qing for this. If it weren't for the help of your Blue Dragon Hall, Ruhua wouldn't have had the chance to find a trace of opportunity and break through to the profound Saint Realm. Elder Raiwa waved his hand. When he mentioned Yen Ruhua, he couldn't help but smile from ear to ear. Yen Ruhua's talent was truly terrifying. Originally, he was only half a step away from the profound Saint Realm. Later, because he was defeated by Zhuoan, he felt deeply humiliated and painstakingly cultivated. Finally, under this pressure, he unexpectedly broke through. Ruhua is still consolidating his cultivation. I think that in a few days, this kid will be able to completely consolidate his cultivation. Currently, he is already in the first mysterious Void Sage realm. Elder Ling Hua said with a smile. Sapphire Shore waved his hand and said, "Then congratulations. Yen Ruhua is worthy of being the holy son of your Burning Heaven sect. His talent is truly extraordinary. The main credit for him being able to break through to the profound Saint Realm so quickly isn't mine, but his own." Elder Raiwa smiled and said, "Hall Master Qing is too modest. Your Blue Dragon Hall's Qing Longzi's talent isn't inferior to Yen Ruhua's. I remember that Qing Longzi broke through to the profound Saint Realm earlier than Ruhua." Sapphire Shore smiled slightly and said, "I'm not that talented. That kid has indeed broken through to the profound Saint Realm." Hearing this, Elder Raiwa raised his eyebrows and said, "It seems that this 9 Serenity Assembly is really going to be very exciting. I'm afraid that some profound Saint Realm geniuses under the age of 300 will emerge. N. Saint luck is extremely important to cultivators who have yet to enter the profound Saint Realm. If it weren't for the fact that I'm over 300 years old, I'm afraid that I wouldn't be able to resist participating in this 9 Serenity Assembly, Sapphire Shore said with some envy. Chapter 1461. The benefits of a mysterious person. The news of Zhuan reappearing in the 9 Netherworld realm, causing havoc in the Saint Martial sect, and killing 3 direct disciples of the Saint Martial sect, the son of Marquis Wu Zhantian, as well as severely injuring the great elder of the Saint Martial sect. Yin is truly an unkillable cockroach. I knew that kid wouldn't die so easily. Lu Hantian stood quietly on top of a mountain peak in the Fine Gods Academy. The wind whistled past, blowing his messy hair, giving him a different style. The current Lu Hantian, whether in terms of temperament or appearance, was vastly different from before. Even the aura on his body was as vast as the sea, extremely deep. Hantian, if this old man's guess is correct, that kid Zhuan should be coming to the 9 Netherworld Conference. If you want to help him, increasing your strength is the first thing you need to do. Suddenly, an ethereal voice came from behind Lu Hantian. At some point, an old man in a long robe was standing behind Lu Hantian. This old man was the dean of the Fine Gods Academy, Yan Ji. His gaze fell on Lu Hantian, full of complexity. There was no doubt that Lu Hantian had the Frost Soul Saint physique, and his cultivation speed was extremely fast. In just a little over a year, his cultivation had reached the half-step sage realm. However, Yan Ji believed that Lu Hantian's potential wasn't limited to this. Before the 9 Netherworld Conference, he hoped that Lu Hantian could advance to the profound sage realm. If you can successfully advance to the profound sage realm before the 9 Netherworld Conference, your strength will be at the top of the younger generation in the 9 Netherworld realm, Yan Ji continued. Before the 9 Netherworld Conference, I will definitely become a profound sage. Lu Hantian said indifferently, then jumped down from the mountain peak, disappearing from Yan Ji's sight in a few leaps. Yan Ji was startled, then shook his head helplessly. That kid is probably still blaming me for Zhuowen's matter. However, Zhuowen's matter has given this little fellow quite a bit of stimulation. Perhaps he really can become a saint before the 9 Underworld Convention. If we add that fellow Yang Yi into the mix, there will be 2 saints among the younger generation of our Divine Academy participating this time. The corners of Yan Ji's mouth revealed a slight smile when he spoke until this point. Soon after, he disappeared from the peak. In the Fine Gods Academy, Lu Hantian was not the only profound Sage Realm Academy. The other profound Sage Academy was also God. Many disciples of the Gods Academy. Zhuan was a powerful attack. Zhuowen's Saint Martial Saint sect was able to God. Many disciples were 9 heavens was. Many disciples' 9 Netherworld sect were profound sage heavens. Within the academy, Jia Nan, Gath, Mo Yen Wushang, Qin Yin, and Mo Ling Tian, who had a good relationship with Zhuowen, were gathered together. Their faces were filled with excitement and surprise. Back then, the battle between Zhuowen and the profound sage was too terrifying. They were too weak to interfere. Because of this, the 5 of them felt somewhat guilty. Even if it was Zhuowen, if not for the Azure Dragon Hall, he would not be a match for a profound sage. I knew Brother Zhuo would survive. Jianan said with a smile. From the news, Zhuowen even has the strength to heavily injure a profound sage. How terrifying. Mo Ling Tian nodded in surprise. Gatha said worriedly, Brother Zhuo has an immortal saint weapon. He has already become the target of everyone in the 9 Netherworld realm. Although he has an immortal saint weapon, he can't fight against the entire 9 Netherworld realm. I hope Brother Zhuo is safe. Moyan Wushang suddenly stood up. Her beautiful eyes were filled with determination as she said, We're still too weak. If we were strong enough, we would have been able to help Zhuowen. After saying that, Mo Yen Wushang left alone. Sister Wushang Jianan scratched her head. She did not understand. Qin Yin sighed inwardly. She did not say anything. However, she could feel Mo Yen Wushang's inner struggle and sadness. When Zhuan was besieged by the 6 profound sages, Mo Yen Wushang was the most emotional. If it was not for the Tai Shen Peak Master, Xian, who stopped him, Mo Yen Wushang would have rushed out to help Zhuan. Zhuan, that brat, caused quite a commotion. Not far from where Mo Yen Wushang and the others were gathered, there was a lazy figure leaning against the rock wall on a mountain peak. His gaze was not on the gathering place where Mo Yen Wushang and the others were gathered. Instead, it fell on the hall of ice and fire that was suspended in the middle of the 9 peaks. It's a pity that he took the holy symbol of ice and fire last time. However, it may prove that this holy symbol and this brat have some fate. Should I give the remaining energy of the holy symbol of ice and fire to him? Take it as a favor. Having said that, the figure jumped up and swept to the entrance of the hall of ice and fire as if he had teleported. Strangely, the powerful ice and fire energy of the ice and fire dual polarity palace was unable to obstruct or affect him in the slightest. Even more inconceivable was that when this person lightly patted the palace door with his right hand, a crack appeared on the palace door. The person directly entered the hall without making a sound. Standing in the hall, the person stretched out his right hand. A strange rune appeared between his eyebrows. The rune was gray. At first glance, it looked like a gray whirlpool that was constantly sucking in everything around it. Come in. With a low cry, the person's right hand pressed on his eyebrows. Immediately, the gray whirlpool between his eyebrows became bigger and bigger. Finally, it spread and filled the entire first level of the Hall of Ice and Fire. Subsequently, the ice and fire energy in the hall were like rivers flowing into the sea as they poured into the gray whirlpool that had suddenly expanded. The speed is too slow. Increase the efficiency. The person said faintly. Immediately, his right hand moved and the gray whirlpool rapidly expanded. In an instant, the entire first level was covered by the whirlpool. In 10 breaths' time, the ice and fire energy of the first level was completely absorbed. Of course, the person did not stop because of that. It's too troublesome to absorb one level at a time. Let all the ice and fire energy of the next 17 levels come in. It was clear that this person was getting impatient. With a wave of his hand, the gray vortex immediately shot towards the depths of the ice and fire dual polarity palace like a formless shadow. Wherever it passed, the ice and fire energies were all absorbed. In 10 minutes, the ice and fire energy of the entire hall of ice and fire had been completely absorbed by the gray whirlpool. Swoosh! After absorbing the ice and fire energy, the gray whirlpool began to shrink. Finally, it turned into the size of a thumb and entered the brow of the person. Soon after, it disappeared. The ice and fire energy of the Hall of Ice and Fire has been completely taken away by me. I wonder if that old fellow Yanji will go crazy from anger. The person yawned and continued, however, it has nothing to do with me even if he goes crazy from anger. I will definitely do him this favor. After speaking, the person waved his right hand and a crack appeared in the empty space in front of him. Immediately he entered the crack. If Zhuan was present, he would definitely be extremely surprised. This was because this person had used the spatial laws to escape into empty space. But why is there no one in the ice and fire energy of the Hall of Ice and Fire? A furious cry was transmitted. Immediately, Yanji had appeared above the Hall of Ice and Fire at an unknown time. At this moment, the surface of the Hall of Ice and Fire did not have any ice and fire energy. It was as bare as an ordinary hall. Yanji had nearly gone crazy from anger. He continuously stood on the Hall of Ice and Fire to vent his anger. This scene was also witnessed by many people in the Inner Academy. The ice and fire energy of the Hall of Ice and Fire has disappeared. What's going on? Countless disciples of the Inner Academy discussed spiritedly. In addition, Yanji's loud roar had alarmed the entire Inner Academy. At the end of the Sea of Bitterness, a figure flew out from the stone tablet of the martial serene domain. It was Zhuan. Next, I'll head to the divine serene domain. However, before that, I'll first head to the Azure Dragon Hall and choose a suitable weapon. Zhuowen's gaze landed on the stone tablet of the divine serene domain as he softly muttered. Just as he was about to take out the Azure Dragon Hall, he suddenly felt that the surrounding space was a little abnormal. What's going on? Why does this space seem to be still? Zhuowen felt that something was wrong. His right fist suddenly shot out. However, when it was a few feet away from the space, it seemed to have encountered an invisible barrier. Crack, crack. After that, the space in an area of 30 m around Zhuowen shattered completely, and it formed a strange cage that confined Zhuowen within it. The power of the laws of the void? Zhuowen's pupils shrank to the size of needles as he cried out in disbelief. In the entire 9 serene domain, he seemed to be the only one who had grasped the laws of the void. How did another person jump out now? Who is it? What's the meaning of hiding? After the shock, Zhuowen gradually calmed down and could not help but shout at the space. Little guy, I'm not hiding. I'm just planning to give you some benefits. A strange distorted voice rang out, causing Zhuowen's face to freeze. It was obvious that the owner of the voice had deliberately changed the tone of his voice. His goal was to prevent Zhuowen from discovering his true voice. Who is this person? He grasped the laws of the void and purposely changed his voice. Could it be someone I know? Zhuowen thought to himself. Little guy, take this gift that I'm giving you. After another voice was transmitted from the empty space, it became completely silent. Soon after, Zhuowen discovered that a powerful ice and fire energy suddenly poured down from the sky. Ice and fire energy? Is it the ice and fire energy from the ice and fire dual polarity hall? Zhuowen was stunned. He was all too familiar with this ice and fire energy. It was the ice and fire energy that was left in the Divine Academy by the Ice and Fire Sacred Talisman. Back then, in order to not be too ruthless, Yuan had naturally left a large portion of the ice and fire energy in the ice and fire dual polarity hall, only bringing out his body. Although he was puzzled, Zhuowen naturally would not reject the ice and fire energy that was sent to him for free. With a thought, he opened his ice-fire eyes at the same time and absorbed all the ice and fire energy from the void into his ice-fire eyes. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.